I'd like to open the meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education for July the 12th, 2016. Usually we ask our superintendent to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, but today we have two special guests, Will and Charlie Fittipaldi, and we're going to ask them to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So please rise. Yeah.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both.
Buenas noches para las personas del público. Si desean los aparatos para escuchar la interpretación simultánea en español, los tenemos aquí por esas puertas dobles. Muchas gracias.
We also have headsets for the hearing impaired. Please indicate if you need a headset. Next, we're going to move on to introductions, proclamations, presentations, or recognitions. Mr. Matsuoka.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. I've done this job in two other settings, and when I walked through that door, I thought, wow, I'm going to be superintendent of Santa Barbara Unified. It's a familiar role, but it's a whole different place. Been on the job for the first couple days, Monday and today, and it's been a great reception by staff. I'm just excited to be here and to work and to lead this fabulous district. We opened two schools yesterday, and so it was great to go out to Santa Barbara Academy and Cleveland. And so I went with Dr. Ramirez, and we visited classrooms, met both principals. It was neat to see kids learning during summer, no less. So I'm really pleased to be here. I want to thank once again the governing board for selecting me as next superintendent. It's big shoes to fill. I appreciate what Dr. Cash has done. I'm learning about his legacy of work. So thank you to Dr. Cash. I hope you're enjoying retirement wherever you are, and just glad to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, and welcome. We are happy to have you and look forward to continuing our work together. And we don't expect you to start running, but I know you're very capable of doing that.
Yes.
Any board correspondence or comments? Mr. Herron.
Yes, first, I would like to thank my grandchildren for leading us in the pledge today. It's very much appreciated. They're earning their civics badge, I think, for the Eagle Scout process. So they're going to be here for a while. I told them they don't need to stay the whole meeting. They can leave at some point and still get credit for it, I'm sure. And their father, Mr. Brian Fittipaldi. So thank you for bringing the boys. Yeah. And second, I need to give an apology. Received some communication from a member of the DLAC from last meeting, and part of the discussion was a report by Dr. Mora that we really didn't let her give, and in my humor, I thanked her and asked her if she wanted to make, I thought I was asking her if she wanted to make any comments on BP 6174, which we approved on the spot in about 1 minute, and I find out that DLAC thought I was asking them if they wanted to give comments, and they weren't expecting to make comments. But in my sense of humor, I was looking at Dr. Moore, but I think they also were in the line of sight, and so they took it that I was talking to them. So I apologize to the DLAC committee and representatives, because I had no intent on citing them or commenting to them on that particular topic, and so I do apologize for that. Thank you.
Any other comments, correspondence? We move on to item number 8, which is the announcement of closed session action. We have nothing to report for closed session. We move on to item number 9, public comments on non-agenda matters within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education.
And we
have four. You'll have 3 minutes, and I will say your names and the next two names so you're prepared. We should first have Shannon Jaffe, and followed by Deborah Pentland, followed by Christian Shi. And I'll give you a 30-second warning before the 3 minutes is up.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Shannon Jaffe. Thank you, board members, for your service to our school district, and thank you for your opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here to speak about a very personal issue, but one that I feel is very important to bring to the board's attention. I'm a former employee of the Incredible Children's Art Network. 9 years ago, I was hired by the Santa Barbara Unified School District as an art teacher. I've been a full-time art educator serving the district under an employment agreement with ICANN for 9 consecutive years. In my 9th year of employment with ICANN, I was making a salary equivalent to a 9-year employee with the district. Now that I've been rehired by the school district, I've been placed at a step 1, which means that the district is not acknowledging any of my years of teaching experience under the employment agreement with ICANN and the school district. I'd like to give each of you a copy of my letter of appeal to Human Resources. This letter of appeal was denied by the cabinet. I have the training, expertise, and history of being a responsible and effective teacher, which should be recognized and valued by the school district. While I was not paid a salary directly by the district and at a tremendous cost savings for that time period, I was accountable to the district to comply with all of the expectations of an employee for the district. Operationally, my role was the same. I had to comply with the same standards of work performance, the same standards of curriculum compliance, the same legal obligations and ethical obligations of a district employee. I'm developing a classroom environment as well as community projects that met, if not improved, the reputation of the district in the eyes of the community. I perform the duties normally required of a certificated employee of the Santa Barbara Unified School District for 9 consecutive years as an art educator. I served 100% of the number of days of a regular employee of the Santa Barbara Unified School District, and I've maintained this percentage for the past 9 years. Again, this was 9 years of devotion to the district. Your workforce is your most precious asset, and I am concerned that the district is not considering the value of this perspective when looking at salary commensurate with experience, previous affiliation, and contribution to the district image and the district students through the arts.
30 seconds.
It is with humbleness and appreciation that I respectfully ask to be acknowledged for my years serving the district as a fully credentialed art educator with a master's degree in education under the employee contract with ICANN. In the spirit of mutual respect and integrity, considering the district's pledged goals of retaining high-quality educators and serving our students with the best possible art education, I ask the board that you please review and reconsider my appeal.
Thank you.
These two. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next we have Deborah
Okay,
Pentland.
one comment on that. Is that something we can have at our next closed session on personnel matters to review?
We will,
This particular one or the policy in general?
The policy.
policy,
I think the policy has to be done in public.
Okay.
yeah.
But we
Can
should,
we have a review of this one in closed session?
I suppose we can.
I'd like to request a review of it in closed session.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Deborah Pentland. I'm a retired school nurse for the Santa Barbara School District. I worked here 25 years. I've come here tonight on behalf of Shannon because I have seen the history of the school district. In 2007, Franklin, a Title I school, was struggling incredibly. They had gone through a number of changes in bilingual education. Their scores were down. We were searching for a principal, and this angel through ICANN came and said, you also need art teachers. You need whole person. Their intellect. It doesn't just come with timetables. Their social emotional emotional growth needs the support of art. We're lucky even art teachers existed. They had been excluded for budgets for so long. But we found them, and they went in and they became part of our schools and worked with our community. Look at the mosaic at McDonald's. I see it every day. I also saw what kind of teacher Shannon was. She really taught to all kinds of diversity and included. I have those adult children now. They'll be contacting you. They are wonderful. Art made a difference in their lives. And as we went through some more changes in the district, we started to adopt social justice. I was thrilled, finally. We looked at everything. We didn't have a rule that was written in 1937 that doesn't apply to our current situation. We were looking at kids in situations and what was appropriate and what was socially justice. This very concerns me because we're talking about a significant decrease in salary for a well-established teacher. So we really need to look at what is our position and is there a policy? Because I've been here like 25 years and it's kind of like the farmer's commercial. I've seen a few things. About 5 years ago, we hired a nurse with no school nurse credential, with no school experience, and she did not get demoted in salary. So we've had flexibility, and we really need to look at, we need flexibility. We need good teachers to come into this community and live where houses are $1 million and rents start at $4,000. We're not going to maintain them, let alone demote them $15,000. So I know that we have the flexibility. I've seen it. I've seen us in our hiring practices use that flexibility.
30 seconds.
And I can't tell you a place where it would be highly recommended, as with Shannon Jaffe. And those students will be contacting you. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Kristen Shee, followed by Don Reef.
Thank you for letting me come here. Can you hear me? I was planning on doing a PowerPoint, but that didn't work out. So you each have a handout that I'm briefly going to go just do some quick points, and maybe then afterwards you can follow along. My name is Kristen Shee. I have 2 actual reasons for coming here, and one is I would like to see more avoidance of latex exposure in our school system, and the second one is I'd like to implement or have the EpiPen program implemented. With the first objection, preventing deaths. Anaphylaxis from latex is real. What I'd like to do is minimize. I know we cannot stop every exposure, but I would like to minimize it. Saving lives with EpiPens. I would like to see the EpiPens available at every school, and to educate not only the nurses but the school personnel on how to recognize the symptoms and use the EpiPen. The latex allergy medical diagnosis is code V1507, and even a minor exposure to latex can trigger a severe allergic reaction, which could be life-threatening. So therefore, medical avoidance is medically indicated. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. It's an emotional topic for me. How to recognize anaphylaxis? It has a rapid onset. It may cause death. Some of the exposures are sports equipment, balloons, and latex gloves. Latex balloons and latex gloves. It can happen within minutes. And I gave you a little handout like this with a little boy, and it shows some of the symptoms along with a lot of the allergens here. One of the ways to prevent anaphylaxis from latex is to strictly avoid exposure, to identify the sources, and to cross-relate the foods that are related to latex. How to treat anaphylaxis? You have a
30 seconds.
Okay, you have a page that shows you how how to treat it. It's with the EpiPen. Call 911 to have a good action plan. The statistics, there's about 6% of Americans now that have latex allergy, which is over 2 million in just California alone. You can get it by contact, and you can also, it's airborne. So if you pop a balloon in this room, the proteins can stay in the room for 6 to 8 hours. And
Time.
thank you very much.
And we'll follow along on the presentation that you gave us, Ms. Sheeb, but can I ask you real quick, I know you're a parent in the district.
I'm a parent. My 3 children have latex allergy.
That's what I was gonna
They each
ask
have, this is what they carry in their backpack every day, all day. The inhalers, the Benadryl, and the epinephrine. The epinephrine is a program. It's a free program from Mylon, and I believe you guys have it at the school district, but it's not implemented yet. And I've been actually working on this for about 7 years to get my children.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
7 years. Oh, one other thing, please, is just, this is, you have it on your back page, the very back page. This is a local student. She was here, she was raised here, went to all the different kindergarten through college here. And she had an anaphylactic shock from latex, and she passed away. And it happened to be my sister, and she just passed away last year. So it's also very emotional for me, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So last, we have Dawn Reef.
Can I stay here so I can turn the pages for her? Thanks.
Tara was my daughter. And one of the ways of getting latex is insertion in the body through an operation. And that gives you the sensitivity. From there, the next worst thing that can happen is you inhale the protein of the latex through your lungs. This is done through balloons, which can pop, and then the dust is going to be in the air. Latex gloves have latex dust on them, and the dust will be in the air. You would think it would be gone if you removed them from the room. No. You go to a doctor's hospital, if there's latex gloves there, the latex is in the air. You're going to visually inhale that into your lungs. The last way that you majorly get latex is through touch. And if you touch things, that gets on your hands, which then can get into your mouth or into your eyes. It's very simple. You can have a little note that you would send out, and in the bottom it says right here, "And thank you for not bringing latex balloons to our school event."
Santa Barbara Community Academy has been really great about it.
So that the EpiPen is also used for latex shock, and it can be used for bees as well. You can get an anaphylactic shock from a bee sting the first time, the second time, or third time, just like you have latex reactions from first, second, or third. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, the EpiPens for school also comes with brochures for, it has a good action plan. I know you guys have really good action plans, but thank you very much for letting me talk. And I hope you can understand me. And
Thank you. We move on to acceptance of donations for July 12th, 2016.
I move to accept with gratitude.
I'll second it.
Okay. And under discussion?
Motion made by Ms. Limon, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Discussion?
Oh, yes, please.
Just one comment. I noticed on the last item was a donation from the ICANN of 20 portable exhibition panels, which in and of itself doesn't say very much, but I know firsthand from visiting almost every ICANN art show, and from what I said at the very first time we heard that that program was going to be changed, that I hope would have maintained the common theme of what ICANN was doing. And these portable screens and panels are an important part of that, because every single ICANN art show was set up the same way, with the same panels, with the same kind of ambiance. And so just having these panels, you then even get into the question, where do you keep them? How do you move them from school to school? How do you maintain them? And I just hope and pray that this district takes those panels and makes awful darn good use of them in the coming years, because it's a great donation. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we move on to the consent agenda. Board, is there any item you want to pull?
I will pull E6.
E6.
I need to abstain from E13.
I'll move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda and without E6, and we'll take E13 separately.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Now, I know the protocol, Mr. President, is that we wait to discuss a pulled item, but Mr. Schwartz is here for that item. I didn't pull it for any particular reason other than it's a big item and I thought it should be discussed. But if there's any way to hear it while he's in the audience now, rather than making him wait for the whole meeting, that's up to you. But
He's actually here for another presentation at the end of the...
oh, good. Okay, that answers that. Thank you. Stay.
So we will stay at the, so we have a motion and a second. We already voted on that. So let's move on to approval of human resource recommendations.
I'll move to approve the July 12th human resource recommendations.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions?
Abstain.
Motion passes 4-0 with one abstention.
So do you want to go back to 6?
No, we are going to continue with the agenda. We'll bring back 6 at the end. So it moves us to our public hearing on adoption of mitigated negative declaration for Peabody Stadium Improvements Project and mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Mr. Hatyak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wasulka, Dr. Paz, members of the board. Peabody Stadium requires a environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. This review was conducted by Dudek and Associates. Jonathan Leach from Dudek and Associates is here in case the board has any questions. So this public hearing is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on the mitigated negative declaration. So with that, if you open the public hearing, receive public comments, and then if the board has any questions, Mr. Leach is available to answer those.
Perfect. So let's close the regular session, open the public hearing, and ask for any public comments on this item from the public. Nothing. So we can close the public hearing, come back to regular agenda, and ask the board if they have any comments or questions, board. Ms. Parker.
And maybe this does require somebody at the podium. Mr. Hetyak, I'm like, where did he go?
Not very far.
Just noting, looking through the document, that the only concerns were ones that I could see were ones that were related to the construction itself, in terms of construction causing noise, construction causing some erosion, and construction maybe interfering with bird nesting, for example, and that those could all be mitigated. And I just want to be sure that I was reading that right, that there's nothing else that we as a board or as a community should be concerned about in terms of environmental impacts.
Correct. Our intent is to mitigate those per the document, provided that the board approves the document. Myself and the construction manager would be responsible for making sure that all of the provisions of the document are enforced during construction. in addition to what you're asked to find in the approval of the resolution.
Any other comments, questions, Mr. Harris?
I had only one comment, that was about lighting, and I assured the person who asked me that from reading that document, the lighting is well taken care of and will be much, much better than what we currently have. Is that correct?
It will be a upgraded system from what is present, in that the light that bleeds out away from the stadium will be minimized. This lighting will be similar to the lighting that you have at the other stadiums within the district at the other two high schools, in that with the construction of the new poles, the neighbors adjacent to the stadium will end up with less bleed over into their property.
I do recognize that there were several letters from neighbors in there, and I thought the responses back to them were very appropriate and covered their concerns. Anybody who wants to know the history of Peabody Stadium should read this document. I think it was an excellent, very impressive document, so thank you for bringing it to us.
I'll pass that on to the author right here.
No other questions, comments, board? If not, we can move on to first item on our action agenda, approval of Resolution 2016-2017-01, adopting the mitigated negative declaration for Peabody Stadium Improvements Project and mitigation monitoring and reporting program at Santa Barbara High School. Mr. Young.
As a Don, I'll make that motion that we approve Resolution 2017-01.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Herron, seconded by Ms. Idelson. Any other comments, questions, board? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Move on to item number 2, approval of Resolution 2016-2017-02, approving the Peabody Stadium Improvements Project at Santa Barbara High School.
Again, Mr. Matsuoka and Dr. Paz, in addition to approval of the first resolution, we're asking you to approve a resolution that approves the project. This is not the approval for the construction or the contract award. This is an approval by the board to allow the project to move forward. You're approving the project, and it's part of the California Environmental Quality Act process, as well as one of the questions on the application for state matching funds. They want to know, has the board approved the project? And as soon as down the road, when the district issues a notice to proceed, we can access those funds. But prior to that, the Department of Education for the state of California needs to give their approval, and part of their approval process is that you have approved the project. So it's just doing things in an order required by statutes.
I'll move approval of 2016-17-02.
Second?
Motion made by Mr. Herron, seconded by Ms. Parker. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
That moves us to item number 3, resend and reduction in force. Mr. Matsuoka.
I believe the background document talks about there was a reduction in force that the staff asked the board to approve a couple months ago, and there's been some staffing changes, and so they want to rescind one of those, as 1 FTE, I believe?
Yes.
Reduction in force? Yeah. Oh, here's Mitch, who will actually answer your question.
Any questions, board? Comments? It's pretty straightforward.
It's a good thing to do.
Yes. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to rescind the reduction in force for one 225-day preschool teacher.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. We move on to item number 4, approval of memorandum of understanding classified work out of classification assignments. Mr. Matsuoka or Mr. Torino?
Mr. Torino.
President Paz, board members, and cabinet members, the classified special education paraeducators listed on the attachment 1 all worked in and were compensated accordingly at a higher classification for significant lengths of time during the 2015-2016 school year. And the class and district and the CSEA have met and agreed that these paraeducators are entitled to move into a higher classification on a permanent basis. The board, and the recommendation is that the board approve this memorandum of understanding. These paraeducators are already paid at the cost of that higher classification, and so the annual cost would be approximately $70,000 to the district.
Board, questions?
I did have correspondence on this issue. I'm not sure if the rest of the board did or not, I forget. But one of the main questions was, they were supposed to move up based upon some training.
Yes.
And I presume that training never took place?
For some it did, for some it didn't.
Well, on this list?
On this list, yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, it did not take place.
And a reason for it? I mean, and are they now trained as if they had taken the
Yes,
class?
they will be trained, they are trained by then to move up into that classification.
Purely because they've been in service doing it?
Correct.
So not any, no particular training?
They will have other training if needed, but they've been doing the work
Yeah.
as if they had been trained. So their qualifications to stay at that level is due to the work that they've been doing, so we're compensating them for what they've already done. Part of the training inability was just the timing, that during the times of training, some of them couldn't make that.
Yeah. Do we have training ongoing?
We will have ongoing training.
new people?
For new people, yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Barker?
I do just want to be careful about that we aren't over-relying on classroom experience, and that teachers who have, paraeducators who haven't had the official district training, they need to come in line the same as people that are being hired in, just to be sure that they've had everything that they need besides just the classroom experience that they've been having. So, but other than that, obviously they should be paid, and it sounds like, we should be very grateful that they're here to serve us in this new level. So I'd be happy to approve the memorandum of understanding for these classified work out of classification assignments.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Yes.
So, I presume they have been paid. I mean, they have been,
Yes.
they've been paid. It's not, we're not giving them anything extra.
No, they have been paid for the work they have done.
They've been paid. On the face of it, it looks like an administrative decision to get rid of a problem, but I presume that's not the case.
No, the case is really that we have people who are working out of class who should be compensated for what they do.
And they have been.
Yes, and also that we have a training process that is in place that sometimes isn't cohesive to our employee being able to get trained while they are doing the work. So we will be more intentional as far as how and when we train new paraeducators as they come into our organization.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, so there's a discussion about what's going to change for the new paraeducators that come in, but what is going to change from here on forward for the current list as far as how we train them?
As needs arise and we need to move a paraeducator up another level, we will make sure that they receive the training prior to that movement.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
We now move on to the conference agenda. Presentation of the post-retirement actuarial valuation report as of July 2015. Mr. Matsuoka.
I'll turn this over to Ms. Jaffe for overview.
Thank you. So I'm here to announce Brad Al, who you have seen a couple of times now. Every 2 years, we are required to do an actuarial study, and we have asked Aon Hewitt Consulting to be our consultants for this actuarial. So I'm going to introduce Brad Al, who you've all seen before, and yeah, go for it, Brad.
All right, thank you for having me here again. So, let's see, do we have the presentation, or is it? Do you have that? Is it a PowerPoint? No? Oh, okay. I'm not sure I have it there, so I'm going to go through it. You've got the report in front of you, but what you just won't have is the outline that I cover. Sorry, I thought it was passed on before. So what it is it's here, this is the cover page of our actual report. It's post-retirement health care, and what we do is evaluation, which essentially determines what the liability is as of the valuation date, which in this case was 2015. The report is done every 2 years, and the most recent one was effective, or the valuation date is as of 2015. The prior one obviously was 2013. It covers other post-employment benefits, health care, and there are benefits that vary depending on bargaining unit. The actuarial liabilities that are determined based on our current retirees and actives that would be eligible, assuming they stay in their classification and retire from the district. Our projections consider the probability of turnover and retirement, and also mortality, so how long people live. And essentially what we do is we take all the entire population, we project them out for their lifetimes, or as long as they're going to receive the benefits. We get that expected cash flow, we discount it back to today, and you have a liability. Let's talk about the liability here is, there's really, shoot, I wish I had, is there a way you can project from a paper? You don't have that. Okay.
Would you like to have someone make a copy of that particular page if you would like?
Yeah, it's a number of pages. It would just be easier.
Yeah, that would be great.
For you.
We'll take a moment.
Yeah. Actually, let me give you another one, and I'll try to cover some pieces. If you can just photocopy that. Apologies. I thought that Alma had, that was a report that I had sent about a month back. So anyway, apologize for that. Let me cover I'll probably cover a little bit more detail to give some time to get some numbers in front of us. The benefit levels by association for certificated and classified, there's fixed dollar benefits that go till age 65. For management and confidential, they're covered. They must be hired before May of 2010, so there were changes made to the benefits. And also, what they receive is a percentage of the premium for life, and that percentage is based on years of service. So the more years of service you have, the more the district pays. I was mentioning the liabilities, what they are. The projected cash flows, we take into account the probability, how long people are expected to work, when those that actually make it, when will they retire, and once you retire, how long will you receive the benefits, how long will you live, and then we also take into account anticipated healthcare inflation. Okay, so all of those considerations are made. So it's not as if we take every employee and say they're all going to make it to retirement. We look at the probabilities and the likelihood of that, which is based on our assumptions, which are based on experience. Okay? I'll come back. What the district used to do is cover is reflect these on an accounting basis, on a pay-as-you-go basis. So as liabilities became due, payments for retirees, that was the only expense that was reflected. What the accounting treatment requires is that you project these out and you recognize costs over the period which the benefits were actually earned, just a basic accounting principle. And that's under GASB 45. Currently the district, or up till now, has been doing pay-as-you-go funding. Consideration has been made for pre-funding. You got that here, close. And for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2018, there'll be new accounting that comes out, new accounting rules that will come into place. The primary effect of those will be a little bit more stringent rules on how the liabilities reflect it. Thank you. Perfect. If you can go, let's go to one more. That one. And then I'm actually going to go back one. I skipped it for a moment. So I'm on the, there we go, this bottom section right here, future GASB developments. Those will be effective, as I mentioned, in fiscal year 2018, fiscal year ending 2018. The biggest item is the unfunded liability moves to the balance sheet. Okay, and I'll kind of, sorry about the order here. I'll mention what that is in a second. The second to bottom bullet, there's a more volatile expense item, so income statement expense item, and that just has to be that has to do with the rules that are coming into place and how you recognize costs over time and what period you recognize them. And then the final one is a change in the discount rate basis, which we'll look at if you have a plan that's funded, the investment return on one end versus the municipal bond index if you have a plan that's not funded. And so that just, that plays in the liabilities. I skipped a part because I wanted you to see that. Can you go back one slide to, sorry. So just to put in some context, these are liabilities. So when I talked about a projection of all liabilities for all of our current participants, that's retirees and current actives, and what their liability is, it's the top number, 20.9 million, so just under $21 million. And that's everything. If we look at and break that up into past service and future service, the past service portion of that is 17 million. And so that's for service earned to date, okay? And then everything else is the future normal costs, and one piece of that is the normal cost. I don't have the number here, but 1 year's worth is what goes into our annual costs. So the annual costs, which are referred to the ARC, annual required contribution, is an amortization of the actuarial accrued liability. So that's the past service plus the normal cost. Okay, if you can go down, perfect, thank you. So I mentioned in the previous slide, it's about $17.5 million now. I updated it past the valuation date to roughly today. The expense accrual is a little over $1 million, $1,058,000. Just for reference, the pay-as-you-go amount, and so what the district is putting in to pay for current retirees roughly is $530,000. The balance sheet liability, under the current GASB rules, what you do, well, the liability is, it's actually an asset right now. I can get into that more, run over it before, but it certainly can get into it now if you'd like. But the key thing under the new GASB rules, which is the last major bullet there, when you apply that, you go from this sort of artificial balance sheet liability, or asset, as I mentioned, to the unfunded liability as your balance sheet liability. So that's about $17.5 million. That's the same number as at the top. And the change in the balance sheet, the impact on the balance sheet is the sum of those two, or $18.2 million. Okay, so that's probably the biggest item on the new GASB rules, which will be effective in 2 years. Any questions on that? Please.
Any questions, board?
I do.
Ms. Idle.
So, back up a little bit. Am I understanding then that we're only really funding the pay-as-you-go for about half of it for next year? Is that, and the rest becomes a liability?
Yeah, so good question. So the way, under current rules, what would happen there is you're expensing $1 million and sort of getting credit for half of that. And so this actually, the asset used to be a larger asset. Okay, because under the plan was paying more before, and some of those benefits have expired, they've gone away. But what you said is correct. You're kind of paying 500, but if you were to really pay what this would be over a 30-year payment period, you'd be paying $1 million.
So we progressively get more and more in debt to this situation, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's, you're short of what it takes.
And what will eventually catch up?
Well, the unfunded liability continues to grow. So what was your question? When will you catch up? When you pre-fund, when you start to fund in advance.
Mr.
I don't know, Meg, if you want to address.
So remember, we set up an irrevocable trust, and that's exactly why we feel we wanted to get an irrevocable trust, is to fund our OPEB liability.
Okay.
So we have a plan, and I think that we've talked about the plan about when the retirement incentives go. We talked about this, that we would keep that on the books and start to fund it.
So is there an expected time when that will turn around? Or are we just going to?
Well, it depends on how many people leave the district that are entitled to these benefits. It depends on anyone who leaves the district is not entitled to it. The more we fund, the quicker we'll catch up. The good thing is that there are no more people coming into it, and so we've stopped the bleeding that way. So we're doing our best to offset this.
Do you project a best-case scenario and a worst-case scenario, or you just have to wait and
It's
see?
$17 million.
Yeah, so what the annual cost that we calculate, they take that in consideration, look at that unfunded, and attempt to pay that over time. In this case, the longest period that the accounting rules allow, which, and I should differentiate. There's accounting and what you're required to recognize as an accounting expense, and there's funding. Nothing in the accounting rules requires funding, pre-funding. I mean, you have to do the pay-as-you-go, you have to pay your current retirees, but nothing requires pre-funding. And a lot of school districts, public agencies are not pre-funding. Now, they're starting, more and more are starting to address it because, and frankly, it's because this balance sheet issue is becoming a bigger deal, right? So when you have to start reflecting that in your financials, that becomes an issue for bond rating. All those other costs go up depending on that situation. And so that's really what's caused public agencies to start managing these and doing one of two things. You either you manage the cost or the benefits, or you put more money aside to pay for the benefits that are there.
May I ask a question regarding Ms. Adelson's? Is my memory correct, Mr. Tay, that this coming year we're putting about $500,000 into that trust in the budget we just approved last meeting?
We still had one more payment on our first retirement. We have 2 more payments after this year for our second retirement, the retiree plan.
So the budget for next year, for the
trust,
for next year includes $500,000 into the trust, and 3 years out, $1 million into the trust.
That's correct.
So that was in the budget we approved.
Plus our pay-as-you-go part.
Yeah, so that was in the budget that we approved.
So I guess, yes, it was in the budget in the multi-years, yes.
So, yeah, so it's starting to approach the $1 million, right? You're putting the other $500,000. Maybe if we go to the next page, just a couple other items of note. So, we're talking about pre-funding. As I mentioned, it's not required, but an unfunded plan results in higher accruals. It's because of the, well, actually, the second bullet there, in irrevocable trust, it's required to get the more favorable accounting treatment. And where that comes from really is the discount rate that you're allowed to use to value these liabilities. So the cash flows don't change. But if you are now putting it away in a trust and earning a higher return than your otherwise low discount rate than what it does. So let's assume, and I'm not suggesting right now, I don't think we've looked at what it's invested in, but let's just assume for a second you earn 5% on that. Okay, and maybe that's high. This is for illustrative purposes. So currently we're using a discount rate of 3%. And I told you that the liability, it's a little different, but it's roughly at $17.2 million. That's if we use 3%. If the assets that you're using to fund, you fund this in the trust, if that were to earn 5%, we can use 5% to discount those cash flows, because that's what you're earning. That liability goes from 17.2 to 12.7. So that's sort of the power of pre-funding in a nutshell. Okay, so your liability drops, your expense drops from $1,058,000 to $874,000. So you can kind of see it in action there. And I think I mentioned in the middle of that how this all affects, your liability all affects bond ratings, cost of debt. I think that's it for my prepared remarks. Any other questions?
I have a question about page 12 of your report and how that relates to page 8.
Okay.
So page 12 of the report is the summary of the principal plan provisions. And I just want to be clear as we're talking about, where the costs come from. When we're talking about our certificated staff, I mean, that's essentially governed by the Ed Code 7000 area, right? So teachers who retire out of our district under Ed Code 7000 have a right to have access to our benefits package, period. That's Ed Code. That's not our own policy or anything like that. That's Ed Code, and that's for teachers. But they pay, but here you make it clear that until they're, they pay the same costs that our current teachers pay for their health care. But they get a reimbursement of up to $1,000 per year until 65, is that correct? And then if they've been here a really long time, if they started before October 82, they get an extra $500 per year after the age of 65. But then it goes down into this management confidential employees section, which when you look at page 8, you can see that even though we have comparatively few management retirees, the costs there are much, much higher. When I look at AR 4354, I don't think it's perfectly clear in the sense that it simply says that these management employees in a certain category, it says they shall continue to qualify for the non-management benefit. And then again, it says, the 100% for 20 years of service, 75%, et cetera, for 15 years of service. But in here, what it makes clear is that the district pays the premium. So our management retirees essentially they no longer, even though when they were working for us, they were paying for their health care. Am I getting this right? So once they're retired, the district pays the premium. Is that correct?
That's correct. And when they become 65 or older, or 65, they go into Medicare right away, and we pay a portion of the Medicare, or 100%, whatever the percentage is.
We pay a portion of the Medicare.
Whatever the percentage that they are retiring.
So if they've been working for us for 20-plus years, we would pay,
and in management for 10,
then they get 100% of their Medicare premium paid. Okay. I just wanted to be clear
correct.
Because it doesn't, the AR, first of all, the AR doesn't say anything about Medicare. It does in Ed Code, but it doesn't in this AR around management. And then this also doesn't really spell out that the district is paying the premium. So that's, that's a real benefit to management, but you can see why we grandfathered it out. And that it's
Exactly.
really, really expensive. Okay.
That's correct. That's exactly why we didn't continue this program.
Okay.
And a lot of districts, when about the same time that we did that, were doing that. We were getting ready to hit some hard times, and they said, don't do this anymore. So it was a lot of people. And sometimes their OPEB is so high, they won't even fund the irrevocable trust, because they're, like, I understand one district up north is 146 million liability. So ours is much smaller than that.
What's the definition of retirement?
Well, eligibility for retirement?
Somebody who's been here 15 years, 10 years, 15 years, and then moves to another district in a new job. Have they retired from our district?
I believe they have to retire.
Or resign.
Yeah.
Resign from our district.
But, and Meg, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and commence receiving their pension benefits immediately, as opposed to deferring it. Is that correct?
We do not allow them to defer it. So if they retire from the district, if they resign, no. They walk away from the district, they're done. And I'm pretty sure, and Mr. Torino can chime in, but if you retire and you go to another district, you cannot defer it until you retire. So we don't allow that either, because we just had an employee that did that.
Okay, that's my question. So
Yeah.
Somebody who's been with us 10 years can't, quote, retire and then take a new job at another district doing the same thing and get our retirements and probably get theirs too?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's generally 55 and 10. So if it's before that, it does not constitute retirement.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board? No other comments? Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you for.
Take care. Safe drive.
Thank you.
That moves us to item number 2.
I have a comment.
On this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Item number 2, presentation and discussion regarding the new communication plan from IDEA Engineering. Mr. Matsuoka.
I'm going to ask Mr. Rickman to provide some
Public comment first.
opening comments.
We also have public comment, so maybe we can start with Mr. Rickman, then we'll stop and do public comment.
I am just here to get the board's input on the direction the board would like to go regarding the communication plan. We need to kind of know at this point in time what you guys have and what you need to know.
Perfect. Why don't we go ahead and take public comment, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. Rickman.
Okay, we have Speaker Meredith Bryce, and you'll have 3 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds before that time is up.
I rewrote this about 12 times while I was over there, so. I'm Meredith Brace. I'm class of '82, Santa Barbara High. My son just graduated last month, and my daughter will be there for 3 more years, so I'm entrenched. I'm all for change. But in place of our old logo that showed a line drawing of a Spanish colonial architecture that the city is so proud of, surrounded by 2 palm trees, the new logo represents a shield with no pictures at all. It's boring, like going from cozy to stark. It looks like a template that needs to be filled in. The colors on the shield were explained to us in the June 28th e-newsletter. Quote, "The warm, inviting colors represent the 4 pillars that we build our identity on," end quote. So we've got green, orange, blue, and red. Well, both San Marcos colors are represented. Because what I saw immediately, hey, you're wasting my time. What I saw immediately, as did many of my friends, was a cross. And we are a public school where religion isn't supposed to play a part. I'm half Jewish, so I took it offensively. I have accepted that every Sunday I have to see the huge reality church banners in front of Santa Barbara High School, only because I assume the district needs the money. I spend time online looking at other school district logos. The shield design is prevalent among Christian schools, most notably Providence and Oaks Christian. And the cost, sources tell me that $16,000 was spent on this basic blank logo. I stand at the flagpole trying to get parents to buy access books so we can raise money for classroom supplies. On the font,
1 more minute.
Nice. On the font, the e-newsletter said, quote, "The font is modern, clean, and readable in today's age of small screens. The font is now all in caps. Isn't that supposed to be a sign of aggression on our small screens?" I ask you to revisit this change and consider having an art contest for it, or at least a committee of board members, teachers, parents, and students.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rickman. Board. Ms. Parker.
Thank you, and thank you for giving us this opportunity.
I'm just so grateful that it's me.
Yeah. You're lucky, Mr. Rickman. The board first saw a proposal for a communications platform to support our bilingual communications plan back in January of 2015. And we looked at it and approved it in February. In January, the proposal came forward with this company that said that they would talk to 20 people. And it actually didn't talk about a logo specifically. It talked about fonts and colors and images, but it didn't use that word logo. And then when it came back to us, there would be focus groups that included school board members and so on and so forth. The first thing I want to say is that I think that sometimes we have a slip here, and that is being really careful that when the board gets something, the public gets something. And so we have finally just seen this communications plan, but it's not attached to this item on the agenda. And so I would first request that within the next 24 hours that gets attached to the agenda so that people can see what we've seen, because it's really important legally that they see, public information at the same time that we do. I think that there's some great advice and input in that document. In terms of the logo, though, I don't know that it was ever that company's intention that we move forward with a logo change without getting wider community input. It seems very inappropriate. I don't know who the 20 people were that gave input. It was certainly not the school board, and I don't think it was any members of our community. And so normally what I would say now is, gosh, with a big change like a logo change, we should turn around and go back to the wider community. But the other reality that I look at is that we approved the idea of making changes at all when we had a different financial picture 18 months ago. And so when I look at the costs involved with vehicle changes, uniform changes, stationary changes, everything that goes with a logo, knowing that in the next year or so, we will be cutting staff. And if I have a member of the public coming to me and saying, you made a logo change and you spent tens of thousands of dollars and you're cutting this teacher's position, it's hard. This is a new environment, and so it's really hard to move forward with that at all. And so I appreciate Ms. Brace's comments. I appreciate some of the other feedback that I've been starting to get from people. I do wish that we'd all been part of the process along the way, and Mr. Rickman, I know that you thought that we were. I know that everybody thought that we were. We weren't. And so I personally would lean towards just pausing, appreciating the information that we've got, realizing that our long arc view has changed, and that it might not be financially feasible to go through with all the expenses associated with that, and then defend that in a year's time.
Mr. Herron.
Yes, I would like to comment on one comment that was made, is that I don't believe the logo was $16,000. In fact, we approved back in October 15 the expenditure of $5,250 for the logo, including a logo in Spanish language version. But I agree totally with Ms. Parker. I don't want to get hung up now on a discussion of the process, because I think the process was atrocious, to be very blunt. As I understand it now, we've spent about $1,000 doing some things with the logo, but if we don't stop it, and we don't have another meeting until August 9th, a lot of money will be spent, because the ball is rolling. And this whole process has already cost us about $50,000. So I would hope, I don't know that we can take action at this meeting other than saying to the people involved, I, for one, as a board member, don't want the logo to go any further. Now, I'm not saying drop it now and go back to the old one, but maybe that's what we want to do. I don't know. That would probably be an easier thing to do, and then come back with the whole plan so we can see what we spend our money on. Because I said at the February 15 meeting, Ms. Idelson, if we would listen to her, she had the right questions. We didn't get the right answers. Pedro, Dr. Paz said we need communication, and I agreed totally. And I said, I look forward to great and wonderful things. A lot of money later, I don't see any great and wonderful things. So I've been disappointed. I'm sure Ms. Idelson has been disappointed because she asked the right questions. And I would hope we would stop it in its track as far as the logo goes. The rest of the stuff we might want to go on with. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in there, and we've paid for it. And so maybe the next meeting or so, we could have a discussion about where we are, but not go ahead and spend any more money now on a logo.
If I may add, I would agree with my fellow board members, and I think when I made the comment about communication, it was in the wider sense of how do we communicate to our community, to our parents, to people who are interested in what the school district is doing. I agree with what's been presented in terms of it having a lot of elements that we can definitely use. The logo issue in and of itself is an issue for me. I never even saw it before it came out until it showed up on my phone, and I looked at it as a Facebook post or something like that, and I'm, what?
I think it was E-News.
Yeah. Ms. Limon.
So when we were thinking about the communication plans, I too thought it was about broader communication, but I also feel like this is a wonderful example of communication that needs to happen and needs to go all the way around. And I likely don't know that my personal starting point would have been with a logo as opposed to technology, to translation with some of our parent programs. I mean, I can name a lot of things that we could really be working on. I agree with the sentiments that have been shared by fellow board members. I do think that everyone who participated likely participated with really good intentions, positive interest in trying to do the branding. I think that when we see the branding book or the presentation, I think the messaging behind branding is greater. I mean, there's reason to want to brand. This is actually, I think, this is not done in vain. This is done with purpose and intention that helps the district. So I want to recognize that the intention here was to try to help the district in the communication process, and I want to recognize that likely those that were involved meant to take us in that direction. I think I would probably say, I might go as far as saying stop using this new logo from here on forward. We can't vote on it, but just based on what I've heard, because there are greater implications all the way around. So that is where I'm at. I know this isn't an action item, but I think you're hearing similar messages from, I think it might be a collective board.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ms. Idelson.
Okay. Well, I had my doubts at the beginning, and this only confirmed it. It was the feeling that I felt when we had the initial point of the meeting when we discussed it. It was the reason I got on board at the end was because I felt the broad communication piece made me believe that this was not about rebranding in a visual way. It was about a people way. It was about bringing it to the community, getting feedback, and then having a common voice. And that was what was strongly communicated from Mr. Dixon to our board is when I rewatched the meeting. And at that point, I thought, okay, it's not about an image as much as it is a working understanding of what our voice is as a district. And of everything I saw here, I didn't get any of that. So that makes me think it has gone down the wrong path in being a logo change, an expensive thing up front. And when I asked that question about, okay, this part back at that meeting is about a monetary item, but then what does that mean down the line? It was brushed away. And I think now we're saying, okay, this is a big ticket, and if we go further on it, that becomes a real item. And I fully agree with what's been said. So, thank you.
So I think to sum up, I'll try to sum up. I am in agreement with the rest of the board. We need to put a pause on the logo. We need to go back to our current logo, which is the one with the palm tree and the one that looks like Santa Barbara. That's what I'm hearing. And you all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard that from everyone. And the second thing that I think I'm hearing from a number of the board members is that when this comes back as an item, whether it's a presentation or just a discussion item, I think what we are looking for, and what I think the intention of the board was when we approved the funding the first time around, when we discussed this, was to really look at this as a communication plan to the wider community. How can we improve what we do as a district in terms of communication? I think a number of times we've talked about it. And in fact, even the last board meeting, we had a discussion about communication and how best we do that. I mean, one of the things we always constantly talk about is how do we reach all of the audiences that don't participate in board meetings, don't have a e-newsletter subscription. How do we make sure that they understand where to find information on our website? How do we communicate what is happening at the district level, at individual schools, in a consistent and welcoming voice? And I think that's what the board was looking for. At least for me, I can speak for myself in this regard. That's what I was looking for. And those are pieces that I think were at the heart of what I was thinking that we were going down a path to address. Because ultimately, one of the things that, as Ms. Limon has said, we talk about communication all the time, about how to improve it and make it better so that we don't make mistakes and we don't say things that we don't mean, and we say things that are interpreted the right way. And so I think that is the second piece that needs to, and if not more important than the logo, that's really what I think the board would like to have you come back with. Staff, not necessarily just you, Mr. Rickman. You're just standing here. But I think as a board, you all are enough people on staff to put your heads together and figure out the best way to approach it and come back and look at it as an opportunity to move forward. Look at this as take what we can from what we have in front of us, build from it, and go from there. Ms. Parker.
And I absolutely agree with you. And I also think it's actually an interesting case study, too, in board purview versus administrative purview, and how that can be a confusing and delicate balance. And sometimes, administration may not think, oh, this is something that the board needs to approve, because we didn't approve the logo in the first place. And so it's like we're not approving it or disapproving it now, but giving direction, essentially. And that is just that there are some things where administration can make the call one or the other, but when it's something that needs to be defended to the community, it's really important that it come through and have board approval.
Yes. Mr. Herring.
I agree. I'd like to point out one other thing that I'd like to staff to look into, in that there are two outstanding bills that we removed from the agenda 2 meetings ago for totaling $15,000. Signed in good faith, or accepted in good faith, signed by Dr. Cash. And I understand the work's been done, almost done. And so I would like somebody to look into that and come to some type of conclusion with the vendor to make sure that we don't get into an argument, is it due or not due? I mean, if the work's been done and it was signed by Dr. Cash, I'd like it looked into, because I don't want any hard feelings with the gentleman who did this, because as far as I understand, he was acting in good faith.
Correct.
And So I don't want to take the position that, hey, we're not going to pay them because we didn't approve it, if in fact it was done anyway. So.
And I think that's a really important point to bring out. We are not looking at this from the standpoint of looking at any sort of negative viewpoint on the firm that worked with the district to do this, because they were under the direction of the district at that point in time and taking direction to do the work that they were being paid to do. So by no means are we doing that. There's a lot of good in here. It's just that we need to build from that and go in the direction that I think we all intended it to go, and which I frankly want to say that the community deserves, because it's an issue that I feel really strongly about. I've mentioned it a number of times about how we need to improve how we communicate. Like, for example, we're going to go into later on the agenda talking about schools of choice, right? One of the aspects we talk about schools of choice is how do we outreach to the community? How do we outreach to parents? Well, that's part of communications. Those are the aspects, those are the core pieces that we need to work on, that always takes an opportunity to say and look back and reflect, how can we improve upon it? You know, we're going to have a discussion about that. I'm sure we're going to have comments about those pieces as well. But that's what we learn from and build from, and hopefully we'll be a better district and because of all this. So I think you have some good feedback and direction, Mr. Rickman. So.
And I just want to thank the board for your insight into how we got here. I think that everybody understands, and we'll make the changes as needed.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Masoka.
I'd like to offer some comments on this topic. You know, the idea of a communication plan, it's much more than an image. It's much more than a logo. And plans are needed. You know, I've been on the job for 2 days, so I'm listening a lot, talking a lot, and I would actually ask the board to give us some time, give me some time to listen, because communication, that's a word that a lot of us throw out when we're frustrated. And it becomes a placeholder for, you know, I don't like this, I don't understand that. And it's like, what are we communicating about? Who are the audiences? And I think what I've heard from you tonight is, who are the unreached audiences that don't hear the message because we're not speaking in the right channels, the right languages. And then today, as an example, there was not alignment from board down to a staff member. And if communication's going to work, it's got to work internal in the district, and it's got to work out in the community. And I would say first it's got to align inside the district, because we're the main communicators, and then the message will be coherent out in our schools, our parents. So I would ask for some time, okay? And then second, you'll hear this from me a lot as superintendent. This was not a voting item, but it was. It really was. I mean, we needed direction. I needed direction because the costs so far were minimal, but the next 4 weeks we would have incurred significant costs. And you'll often hear me, I need direction from the board. We need direction from the board, and we got it. And it doesn't always require, you know, a formal vote, but I appreciate the clarity tonight. That was a really clear message. And you know, we'll take what's in the plan and use it, but I think communication is a much broader topic. It's a challenge for every school district. So appreciate some time and space. So Todd, you don't have to produce something in 4 weeks. Actually, we don't have to produce something. So appreciate the discussion. Thank you.
And I did not expect that, so I was expecting you all to come back and give us some minor update. We're working on something or something along those lines, because to have something by the next board meeting, if the next board meeting is the beginning of August, is a quick turnaround. So, and I look at this, especially when we're talking about the communication plan, is it's not a static document. And I think that's what you're alluding to, Mr. Matsuoka, is that it's something we work on all the time, you know, broader principles about how we approach communication. And so I appreciate that comment very much. With that,
I also appreciate the comment of working jointly, no surprises.
Thank you.
This would be a prime example.
Yes. With that, board, we can move on to item number 3 for the discussion of Fast Forward Reading Intervention Program.
And we have a public speaker also.
Okay. Should we take public speaker first, and then we can move on? Thank you.
All right. Cherie Ray.
I'll be back right now.
On the topic of Fast Forward.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Sherry Ray. I have been the voice of dyslexia in Santa Barbara for the past 5 years, and I'm the author of Dyslexia Land, a map and guide for students, parents, and educators. Please note that 1 in 5 individuals have dyslexia. Typically, that means 5 to 6 students in any classroom. I appreciate the attempt to provide a dyslexia-appropriate reading program in the special education department. After all, students with dyslexia comprise nearly 60% of those students in special ed. And from my own personal experience, and it's been more than 5 years that Read 180 has been the only reading program for students with dyslexia, a program that is not an effective teaching or remediation for them. I'm concerned, though, that Fast Forward is not the proper remediation for them either, since it lacks the one-on-one multisensory approach to developing phonemic awareness that only comes from working with a highly trained, responsive educator. We need a strategic approach to dyslexia, the implementation of an Orton Gillingham reading program, early identification, well-trained teachers, and an appropriate approach to dyslexia in general education to keep these struggling readers out of special education in the first place. My concern is that Fast Forward might be fine for some struggling readers, but just like Read 180, not for dyslexic students with their unique neurological wiring. The negative consequences of these unnecessary struggles that they go through are too numerous to account here and now. If you vote for this large expenditure, please remember that it will do little to no good for the majority of students in special ed, and we will still need an Orton Gillingham program and training to meet the specific needs of those students with dyslexia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Matsuoka.
Ms. Rodriguez, provide overview and opening comments on this.
Good evening, Board President Paz and board members, and also Superintendent Matsuoka and cabinet members. We are here today to talk about Fast Forward, and with me is Ariel Carey. But before I talk to you about what is Fast Forward and all of the wonderful things that it offers, I have to share with you that we have been on a journey in special ed, and as Sherry Ray has pointed out, that yes, we have a vast of students with disabilities, one and specific learning disability, which that's where we'll find students with dyslexia. And then we have other students with disabilities, and we have EL special ed students. So we have a variety of disabilities that we have to find a program. So before, again, I want to give you just a little history of our journey. We were able to create a moderate to severe reading committee, which entailed, Sherry Ray was on it, wonderful, gave us some guidance on some reading programs. And also, we had our mild to moderate teachers that were selected that had been seasoned teachers that were on there. We had a couple of principals, and we had the EL director. And their task was to research reading interventions. And they provided, at the end, about 6 reading interventions. We invited the publishers in, and at that time, we asked each principal to send a mild to moderate teacher to help us select a reading intervention. And they did. Fast Forward was one, and we looked at Fast Forward as a supplemental to a direct instruction reading intervention. And the other one was Reading Horizon. And thank you, Mr. Herron, for providing us additional information. We discovered that that program was not culturally proficient. So now we have to go back to task and find a reading intervention that has Orton Gilliam based so that we can also address those students with dyslexia, in addition to students with EL. So with the Fast Forward, with that, I'd like to share with you what Fast Forward is. This program is designed to provide supplemental academic support and learning opportunities in reading and language for struggling students, including at-risk students, ELL students, and special education students. Specific skills developed will facilitate the implementation of Common Core standards across all grade levels of instruction. The Fast Forward is a computer-based, empirically proven reading program intended to help students develop and strengthen the cognitive skills necessary for successful reading and learning. This program can be designed to be used 30 to 100 minutes a day, up to 5 days a week, for 4 to 16 weeks, and includes 2 components. The first component, the Fast Forward Word, Language, and Literacy series, aims to build cognitive skills such as memory, attention, processing, and sequencing, as well as language and reading skills, including listening accuracy, phonological awareness, and knowledge of language structures. The second component, the Fast Forward to Reading series, aims to increase processing efficiency and further improve reading skills such as sound letter association, phonological awareness, word recognition, knowledge of English language conventions, vocabulary, and comprehension. These aspects are critical for all students, especially our English language learners, to become proficient readers. This program, developed by scientists with expertise in the areas of brain plasticity, cognitive development, and reading instruction, is designed to adapt the nature and difficulty of the content based on individual students' responses. The program builds the reading skills necessary to become proficient readers as they apply our graded Common Core standards. Research related to the implementation of Fast Forward has demonstrated that students can average a 1 to 2 grade level reading gain in 8 to 12 weeks. When the brain's processing skills become more efficient, substantial and quick gains in reading comprehension skills are often the outcome. The next question is, how will we implement Fast Forward? Well, it will be a 2-year implementation phase. In the fall of 2016, we will pilot Fast Forward at 2 elementary schools and 2 secondary schools. The special education office will work with school sites to demonstrate which mild to moderate students would benefit from the Fast Forward program. We plan to implement the Fast Forward in 4 phases. Each phase will consist of 5 to 6 schools. At this time, I would like Ariel to talk about the fiscal impact.
Good evening. The fiscal impact for Fast Forward is going to be broken down into 2 phases. The first phase I'm going to talk about is the 2-year implementation phase and the costs it'll bring to our district when we implement this with all of our schools. We have our elementary schools, La Colina, La Cuesta, and Alta Vista. They will be receiving student licenses. The rationale behind that is because the number of students that will be utilizing Fast Forward is less than 76 students. Total, that's 539 students, and that'll be a cost of $221.60 per student. Overall, it'll be $119,440 for the student licenses. Our remaining junior high schools and high schools will receive site licenses. That's because they have a greater than 76 students that will be using Fast Forward. The site license would cost $16,800. Collectively, that would cost $100,000 or $800 for all of the schools using that. Fast Forward did not have an option to utilize a district license, so we were unable to explore that as an option. Additionally, Fast Forward will provide 2 initial trainings, one for our elementary schools, one for our secondary schools. The trainings will cost $2,300 per session, so for a 2-day training, that would be $4,600. We're projecting for implementing this program, it would be $224,840. Please note that we will most likely be implementing this in different phases, so the training costs will be reflected as a result of the additional trainings we'll have. So we'll have 4,600 added a couple more times. We will be piloting 4 schools. They will be piloting Fast Forward in the fall of 2016, 2 of our elementary schools, and then 2 of our secondary schools. Our 2 elementary schools will receive site licenses, so they're between their student licenses. So between their 2 respective schools, there's 77 student licenses that we'll need to purchase. Altogether, that will cost $17,063. Our 2 secondary schools will receive site licenses. For those 2 schools, that would cost $33,600. Again, these schools will also be receiving the professional learning, 1 for elementary, 1 for secondary. That'll be $4,600. So for this initial phase for our pilot schools in the fall, it will cost $55,263.
Before I bring closure, I did want to share some data with you real quickly. There's about 1,920 students with disabilities in our district. And with that, there's 1,073 that have specific learning disabilities. And also there's 673 that have speech and language impairment. Of the 1,073 students, there's 575 students who are English language learners. And of the 673 of SLI, or specific speech and language impairment, there's 316 English language learners. So that is about 47% of speech and language impairment, and 54% of specific learning disabilities that are EL. If we want to even look furthermore into the language piece, students who have language with another area of need, which could be articulation or voice, there's 526. Of those 526, there's 309 English language learners. With language only, there's 333 students. Of the 333 students, there's 206 students that are English language learners. That is about 63%. So these are recent data, and with just listening to that data, we need something now to help our students. We are not using Read 180 in the elementary. That, from what I understand, Dr. Ramirez had shared with me today that they are not using that. There may be some in the secondary. So as we're transitioning, we're going to need something. But we also recognize that come the fall, that we'll be working with the committee again to find a Orton Gilliam-based intervention program, reading program that has direct instruction. And once we do that, we have that direct instruction with this supplemental, and we combine it, and it will be very powerful, hit all students, students with dyslexia and students who are EL. Our goal is to see, given these programs to our students, those students who probably should not be in special ed, we will see them leaving special ed and continuing on and having other options other than what they have ahead of them now. And that could be going to college with strong skills, or if they decide to go vocational, or whatever they decide to do. But right now, our focus here in special ed for this coming year is literacy and training our teachers.
Ms. Idelson.
So you mentioned $224,000 for full implementation of this program? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so then my question is, when you mentioned for dyslexia students, what amount are you looking for that program for the Orton Gilliam?
Well, it'll depend on the program that the reading committee chooses. This is exclusively for Fast Forward. The reading committee is going to reconvene in the fall to discuss an Orton Gillingham program. So we'll be able to share more information about that once the committee and teachers have voted on a program.
So roughly, is that an equally priced program for that? Or, I mean, just for an understanding of a rough estimate, are we looking at like $500,000 to have a full implementation of both? A full?
That's a good question. When we were exploring Reading Horizons, the price was essentially the same to implement that program. There's a program called Sunday that we're exploring. The cost is a little less than Reading Horizons, so I think it's fair to assume that the cost for the second program would be comparable to the Fast Forward as well.
And you need similar licenses for all the schools, or do they?
With the other programs, it may be a direct instruction kit, which in that case, we would just be purchasing the consumables. It would be a one-time cost. There wouldn't be an added fee going forward in the future. With Fast Forward, since it is web-based, there is ongoing costs, so we'll need to renew the licenses for that on an annual basis.
Thank you.
Ms. Parker.
Ms. Rodriguez, I want to first really compliment you on the process, because I feel like there's been so much institutional memory lost around how to adopt new curricula. And I know you've heard that from me before, and to see the way you set up the committee and the time that you took with them and the votes that you took and the teacher involvement and the parent involvement, that's great. I mean, what I would say at the end is that in terms of what used to happen and probably what needs to happen is just more time for the public to come in and really look at it and reach out and make sure that you've given every opportunity. And it's, you know, in the past, it was typically 2 or 3 weeks that it would be set up and available for members of the community, for the board, for staff to go in and just browse it, for gen ed teachers to go browse it. Everybody got the opportunity. And so I think that that's something that probably could be tweaked, but in general, it's like light years progress in terms, and I hope that everybody's looking at this as a role model in terms of how teachers should be involved in the process. The only thing that I would say about it is that, I'm hearing a little confusion around, is this a pilot program? If we're just doing pilots are a really natural next step. If we are doing a pilot, it gives us the opportunity to see if it actually helps our students without investing in a large amount of money. I mean, that's something that you all can think about. And I'm also, any reading program for students with dyslexia, I mean, this is essentially addressing directly AB 1369. And so even though it sounds like you're talking about ELs, maybe in particular would benefit from this, ELs with dyslexia. And I don't know if you want to clarify that. I'm just not positive if we're talking about essentially 2 supplemental programs.
Yes, we are. And as I said, this is a supplemental program to the program that we choose that has Orton Gilliam base, whether it's Barton, whether it's Sunday. At this point, I can't make that choice. Again, it has to go through the committee, and we're looking at a timeline of coming back to you with the Orton Gilliam based reading intervention, which is direct instruction, in December. But coming back to Fast Forward, when you read the literature, it does mention specific learning disabilities. It mentions Asperger's, students with autism. It mentions auditory processing. So when you hear auditory processing, that is a red flag to say, oh, EL kids, because when you think about EL students, and the reason why I shared the data, because the language and the fluency has to do with the vocabulary. It has to do with their cognitive academic language proficiency. And so our task is to, as I stated before, we have various students with various disabilities, and we have to find some programs that will address. And the Orton Gilliam based, I believe, is good for all students, and that would be the strong kind of core where we're in our 3rd tier. We're talking about mild to moderate students, special ed students. Those students there would get that that instruction, and then of course the Fast Forward would supplement and complement and reinforce what the teacher has given in direct instruction. So it's not just going to be one program. And we have looked at our budget. We were able to put aside for the Fast Forward, and and fortunately we've been able to save some cost in the legal fees. So as a result, we're able to use that money for for our reading programs. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We have this huge responsibility in special ed to make sure that we are developing programs, because when we have quality programs, I think students are learning and they're excelling, and parents are very satisfied. So that's our goal. That's our overall goal. And right now, it's been a journey. And we just didn't do this. This has been in the making since I met Sherry Ray, and her angel voice has been in my ear saying, you know, we need to do something about our students with disabilities. And we have been working with Sherry, and I understand her frustration, and frankly, I'm frustrated too, but we have to stay the course, and we have to stay focused, and we have to take one step at a time. And again, the teachers chose this. The teachers voted for these programs. And I had a principal comment to me, you just made my job so much easier, because now I don't have to convince the teachers to do this. And I think we're headed in the right direction.
Ms. Mendelson.
I just want clarity. So my understanding is the fast forward method is very different than the Orton-Gilliam method. But you sort of described it that it would overlap, that students would go from one to the other. Is that the case? Or do you basically target a student who's dyslexic with needs a different program than a student who would, say, do the fast forward?
So the Orton-Gilliam-based instruction, it can apply to all students, but you have to have direct instruction. And I'm going back to when I was a first grade teacher, kindergarten teacher, and you would do the direct instruction with Orton-Gilliam strategies in a small group, and then you have an independent group, and that would be the fast forward. And the fast forward, the reason why children enjoy it, or students, because it's based on video games, but without them realizing they're actually being reinforced, their EL if they're the specific learning disabled, or even students with dyslexia. Now, I agree with Sherry Ray, that is not going to be the solid program for a student with dyslexia, but it can reinforce what a student will have received in the Orton-Gilliam Orton-Gilliam intensive program. Also, I just want to make a note that our teachers will be receiving Orton-Gilliam strategies. So with the strategies and with the tool, which I would say whichever reading program we have, and then also with the Fast Forward, we're going to have a dynamic reading intervention program for our children, mild to moderate.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lima.
Thank you. Speaking of the history, man, do I have a history with Read 180. And that reminds me of, I think, the last presentation where we talked about Read 180, the whopping over $1 million investment with little data collected and evidence that it had been an investment as opposed to an expenditure. And how do you see this? I mean, I think we learned. We learned from it, but how do you, if this is going forward, do you plan to bring information back to the committee, back, to others as far as, like, is it effective? Does the program itself have a means to evaluate its success with students? And also maybe even break down, wow, okay, we just learned an extra layer. This particular target group is more successful with this program than others. What is that going to look like? And maybe you don't completely know it now, but just, I mean, how do we think about if something like this moves forward, given we've tried other literacy programs?
So right now, I understand that we're going toward the STAR, and we'll hopefully use that when we train our teachers. But also, there is some built-in where the students are progressing, and there's data that's being collected through the program. Now, I can't give you the specifics. I certainly can come back and provide those specifics, but yes, we will be monitoring that. In addition to that, we have our annual IEPs, and we're going to see the growth. And getting back to Read 180, Read 180 is for 4th through 12th. We're looking at a program that's K through 12, and not just in Fast Forward, but also Orton-Gilliam. That's the difference. And also the other difference is, and I agree with Sherry, that Read 180 is not appropriate for students with disabilities, especially students with dyslexia. And it may be very well for the EL students, and if there are any EL students in special ed that are successful in Read 180, then that tells me, well, maybe they should not be in special ed, and they are over-identified and misidentified and put in special ed. But that's the type of data that helps the case provider, which is the teacher. It helps the site administrator. It also helps our office to monitor our children, because we're not perfect. Sometimes our children end up in a program that they shouldn't be in, and we're holding an IEP and bringing them back and put the student in the appropriate program. So that's going to happen, but what helps us recognize that is data. Our special ed teachers, our para-eds are trained on collecting data. We need that data when we have our annual IEPs, or when we have an IEP. It's data-based. We have to show that. Can our teachers enhance their skills in reading? Of course they can. And that's our responsibility to provide those opportunities for our teachers. But I feel very good that we're in the right direction. We're making the right steps toward our teachers are being trained. We already had a group of teachers trained through the SELPA with Dr. Jerice Butterfield. They went through a week training. Ariel Carey just received her reading certificate. She went through that training. And again, I'll reiterate that in August we have an Orton Gilliam, and thanks again to Sherry Ray, made a referral coming out to train at least 10 of our teachers on Orton Gilliam strategies. So this is the beginning. It's not going to stop, and we're going to continue to move forward. I'm going to make sure that my managers are all trained in Orton Gilliam so that they also can go out and train teachers.
So, thank you. And like I said, if this is the direction we're moving in, I hope that part of the committee also has a discussion, not just about the program, but about how we measure success and how we can talk about that success, not just measure it, but talk about that success. I think at different levels to, the parents that are involved with the IEPs, to the community, and also just to the board.
On the agenda item is a contract for the entire $224,000 and 500, almost 600 licenses. Yeah, 539 licenses, 225,000. Is that what you're asking us to approve, or is there a pilot program part of that?
Initially, we were looking at that, but since we are going to roll it out in phases, it will be in phases. And here's what we're going to have to do, is that we're going to have to work with the school sites, because not all mild to moderate students will need Fast Forward. We're going to have to look at their reading levels, where they're at. There are some mild to moderate students that don't need Fast Forward, and there'll be some. For example, La Cumbre, one of the pilot schools with Joanne Keynes, there are 18 students there that need this program. They're in 7th and 8th grade, and they're reading at 1st grade level. This program, the teacher's excited. She can't wait to be trained. She wants to implement it, so we're going to provide that there at La Cumbre. We're going to look at the other schools, and we'll look at the data again. Again, we're making decisions off of data. And those students who need Fast Forward, then we will buy the license for them. And I suspect, I cannot tell you now, but maybe the next time we bring this forward, I'll be able to have an estimate for these 4 schools what the actual cost is. Because we have to pull the data, we have to look at which students will benefit, and then from there we'll be able to determine how many license.
I guess I would appreciate when it comes back at probably the next meeting, that it be exactly that, a pilot program for a specific use at a specific dollar cost. Secondly, if I recall in the implementation, there was going to be training in the first part of August.
Yes, we're not doing that. Again, we're going to work with those pilot sites, and the teachers from those sites, for example, La Cumbre, there's one teacher that will be trained, and we'll work with the other school sites and for them to send a teacher.
When you say the teachers have approved this,
let me clarify.
what teachers are we talking about?
Mild to moderate teachers.
So it's not teachers in general across the...
And thank you. No, it's mild to moderate teachers, and they were mild to moderate teachers that the principal sent on the day for them to review different, there was 6 reading interventions, and this one was number 1.
We're not talking about every teacher in the district is going to be involved in this process.
No, we're focusing on special ed, mild to moderate teachers and mild to moderate students.
And in this documentation, it says there's some 250 research studies on the program. Have we seen any of them or read any of them?
No, we can pull that if you, I mean, we can
I'm just
send
curious
it.
what
Yes.
research we've done. Have we talked to other districts who use it?
No, we haven't.
Yeah. 'Cause I did one little Google, and one of the comments I got was it's a minimum teacher role, requires trained technician and trained educator. I guess we're going to have the trained educator part of it.
Right.
As I understand, just what you said. But the teacher's role is, in a general classroom, is probably not that relevant. It's the person you just described.
Right. It's a supplemental to a direct instruction program. We haven't found the direct instruction with Orton Gilliam. It's a supplemental. Just think of a student that can go and work independently in the classroom, and as they're working independently on Fast Forward, they're being reinforced of what skills they have learned through the Orton Gilliam direct instruction.
And how soon will we have some results of this first pilot program that we can look at, decide whether we want to go forward?
I think we need to look at least a semester. So if we implement with the 4 schools, I'm hoping by January.
And come back?
Yeah, we can come back.
Okay, yeah. I would appreciate coming to us as a pilot program for approval, and having some method of, one of the problems with Read 180 is the initial cost was over $1 million, and since then, we've spent another $1 million probably on stuff. And all the results the first year were produced by the owner of the program. So obviously, they all looked great. So I hope there's some way to look at the results, to interpret them, to see if it's worth going forward. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, board? Thank you.
Thank you.
That moves us to item number 4 on our conference agenda, transitional kindergarten program update. Mr. Matsuoka.
Dr. Ramirez will provide this report.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Board President Paz, board members, Cabinet, Mr. Matsuoka. Wanted to have an opportunity to present on a topic that obviously has a lot of bearing on some parents in the community and families in the community. So I wanted to just go ahead and go through the slides here. You also have an accompanying attachment that dated from the California Department of Education, dated July 17, 2015, that was added as an exhibit as well, that I will be referencing. So please feel free to ask questions along the way. So just to give you a little bit of background and just make sure that we're all on the same page, Transitional Kinder was established to provide a 2-year kindergarten program. And that was for 2 purposes. One is that we recognized that there were students who were entering kindergarten and at almost a year's chronological age difference to some of their grade level peers. And a number of studies have indicated that those students who are on the younger end over time have lower attainment and achievement levels. So that was one purpose. The other thing is that as the enrollment date started to get pulled back over a 3-year period from December all the way up to September, there was a need to have a transitional program as well, which allowed for that to happen over time. So currently, our district has implemented that program now for several years, and it applies to students who are born between September 2nd and December 2nd of a particular year. Okay. Recently, and by recent I mean July 1st of 2015, a trailer bill came into effect, and that is that amendment that was added as an exhibit that has the language, and that amendment was amending Code 4800 C. And essentially, the summary is as such, and it permits local education agencies, districts, charter organizations to grant early admissions for students that would be otherwise too young to attend transitional kinder. Allows students who turn 5 years old after December 2nd, but before the end of the same school year, to attend TK at any time during the school year. So that's essentially how the language is written, including at the beginning of the school year at the discretion of the LEA. And but one of the important and interesting bits of the amendment includes that that children who gain early admittance will not generate ADA or be counted toward the unduplicated count in LCFF. So that's an important little component to keep in mind as we kind of discuss this a little further. Are there any questions up to this point? So in looking at this, another bit of a wrinkle here is that when the governor's budget was initially announced, it included language there about the creation of an early education block grant proposal. And without getting into all of the details of that, it also, in that original language, called for the elimination altogether of transitional kinder. And it wasn't until the May revise that was ultimately struck down and not a part of the budget. So during that time, we've been really trying to gather more information, gather more by way of other districts who've been early implementers. There have been some webinars, and this has been really involvement with our fiscal department, with our preschool coordinator, Michelle Robertson, who wanted to be here but is otherwise detained. And so it really brought, it was just a lot of discussion around how to consider this, because a lot of families in the community were asking about our direction when it came to this particular amendment in this new language. So as we start to really consider our local considerations, one thing that is important to note is that as a district, as an LEA, we ultimately reserve the right to stand pat or to decide to make any modifications to our board policy. Okay, so this amendment simply grants us the opportunity and the ability, and for you as a board, to make any modifications or changes that you see as beneficial to students and beneficial to the district. In terms of but in terms of informing your decision-making, I can share with you the following. Early childhood education obviously is a big priority in our district, and I'd like for you to consider this not just in terms of preschool, but in terms of the 0 to 8 span, which encompasses the lower grades at the elementary. And just to remind that our primary goal is to develop and maintain a high-quality early education program with a seamless articulation from one grade over to the next. And another piece of this is considering the age and stage appropriate actions of our decisions, including an adult to child ratio. So one thing in considering this moving forward would be that our transitional kinder class size really is right in that 20 to 25 on average, has been historically. And whereas in preschool, oftentimes what you'll find is that it's a different ratio of 8 to 1, 12 to 1, depending on the setting and depending on the adults involved. But a 12 to 1 ratio is really what's called for. So we'd have a very different setting for children that potentially at the start of the year and maybe throughout most of their year would be 4 years old. Another additional kind of consideration to keep in mind is that the admittance is in the best interest of the child, and that's where we would have to develop some criteria for how to have those communications and be able to very quickly assess how to determine that. And that would that would be determined by way of both formal and informal type assessments and anecdotal feedback as well from parents. And there are instruments that we could definitely look at a little more in this particular, as we consider this. And ultimately, one thing to also consider is that changes or modifications to BP 6170 would have an impact on the district preschool program and our district preschool contract specifically, as noted in the fiscal impact. So to give you an idea, the full fiscal impact of this particular decision, depending on how the board provides us with guidance on, is not completely known. What we do know is that there are students, particularly because many of the students that would potentially be eligible may not actually be in our state preschools, may not be a part of our district quite yet. And what I can tell you is that in our research, we've identified 27 students from this upcoming cohort of preschool students that would, depending on how this depending on how the modifications, if they were to come to be recommended, would be eligible. And that's what comprises that change of $108,000. Yes.
So I have a question just about this, and I want to make sure I'm understanding how you got to the 108,000. So is it that if we take students from the state preschool program and put them into transitional kindergarten, we then lose money? And we would take students from the state preschool program if this board were to give direction to do early admissions before the child is 5?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
That is correct. And the reason that we noted that the full fiscal impact is not completely known is because we would have to determine what that date is. So, for example, all those students that are that would turn 5, if you recall, they would turn 5 at any point in time during the year. That means that this year, starting August 22nd, all the way through the end of the school year, if they turn 5 at any point in time, they could, according to the amendment, start on day 1. Okay? We don't know how many students that is and how many are out and how many families would want to opt into something like that if we were to just adopt this wholesale. So there's many modifications to keep in mind as we kind of consider, and in the next slide, as staff, we've put together a couple of options for you to start to more or less think about.
Could I ask a question on that one?
Sure.
The last sentence, would or could be in excess, is it would be in excess or could be in excess?
I'm sorry, could. Or would, if because of the fact that we've identified those 27. So that was just a.
So it would be.
It would be.
Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of potential program options, we certainly could explore more options, but these are 3 basic ones for you to consider. We could maintain the current transitional kindergarten program, and that would mean that the program would remain unchanged, the dates would remain unchanged, the board policy would remain unchanged, and that the preschool programming would continue according to its the current contract with the spaces available that we currently have. And another option would be to establish a mid-year enrollment period. This is what one particular district that we were looking at went ahead and did. So what they did is, for children who turn 5 after December 2nd, but before the end of the school year, they didn't begin at the beginning of the school year, in this case, August 22nd. They actually began at the midpoint. How this would work with our state preschool program is that we have staff, we have teachers in our preschool program that have a multiple subject credential. So essentially, we would create a cohort of students that, in order to cause minimal interruptions, would just basically transition, at least on paper, from being preschoolers to transitional kinder students without having any interruptions or impact to their day or their classroom culture. Okay, that's just one example of how this would ultimately play out.
And would this cohort be per site?
We would have to identify sites. We would have to identify sites where this would potentially take place, but as a mid-year option, then we would also have to open it up to students and families, or children and families that are not part of that part of our preschool program, that may be in other settings, that we would then look at. And this would also entail coming up with that criteria that would attend to being in the best interest of a child. Okay? And the last one is to align the enrollment period to the beginning of the year, which would mean that it would be consistent with our current TK eligible criteria, meaning that any child who turns 5 after December 2nd would begin the year in transitional kinder. So that is what I would call the wholesale approach. That means that any student, regardless, would come in, and if given certain criteria, we would move forward. Now, as staff, we would like to offer up a recommendation, given where we are and given the timing. Anecdotally, we've discussed some of these things with our transitional kinder teachers in terms of just where they have, because the transitional kinder program is a program separate from the kinder program. It's developmentally different, and in terms of expectations, although articulated, requires a different approach. And our transitional kindergarten teachers have worked really diligently the last couple of years to discern that difference. And what they know is that you still have students that come to them with very different schooling and just schooling and academic backgrounds. You have students that have attended preschool for 1 or 2 years, even at that young age, while others have not. And while it's still a great opportunity, and there are challenges. There are challenges with being a single teacher in a classroom full of 20 or 25 for bordering on 5-year-olds. That's a heavy lift. So our recommendation as staff is that we stand pat for the 16-17 school year, gather more information over the course of the school year, and be able to, based on your guidance and suggestion, come back with a recommendation in the future.
Ms. Parker.
You know you have members of the community out there that want this right now.
I know that. I know that.
So I appreciate that as well, but I certainly appreciate what, the staff position. It's not something that you'd necessarily want to rush into. In general, I would say, I know that there are those children that, you can't define them by their birth date in either direction.
Correct.
And I really appreciate flexibility. I'm also looking at this in the sense of, do we have lots of spaces in our TK classrooms?
Right now we have as of today, we have 148, and in terms of spaces available, I can tell you that we don't have a whole lot.
Because
it would depend on the site.
Right. There's a whole protocol around who gets in. If there were 27 children, because you can't hire a teacher, because they have no money attached to these children until they turn 5.
That's correct.
So they would need to fit into slots that are just open because there's a teacher there already for other students.
Not necessarily. The moment that we make a change to the board policy, we have made a change to the board policy, which would mean that they are now, again, with the provision of in the best interest of the child, and we would have to define how we make recommendations that way.
But the state is not giving us money for them, so unless we want to hit our budget, which I can tell you right now that we do not want to hit our budget, that we would need to go into where there are spaces available.
Correct, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they would also be, at that point, we would have to look at it in terms of a FAPE issue as well. And I don't know, I would have to explore that issue a little bit more.
Interesting. Yes, so there's a lot to explore around that, because then if it's a FAPE issue, where really we need to be serving these students, or if it's as space available, but then who gets priority. I think that there's probably more work to do around it than we could possibly put together in the space of just a few weeks. And so I'm very much in favor of flexibility, and I think that this is something that we need to explore. I completely appreciate that we can't rush it.
Mr. Hearn.
When it comes to, you mentioned the benefit to the student versus the benefit to the district. I would come down on the side of benefit to the student if at all possible. But the criteria is what sort of interests me, and that includes space, that includes a lot of things. But I would want to see some criteria spelled out so that just isn't, hey, mom and dad want it, so do it. Have you seen programs where there is criteria that we can set up here and say, hey, you didn't make the criteria? And it's not a judgmental thing. It's something that you can look at documentation and see. Because I can imagine a lot of parents saying, I want to do it. And then we'd be in a fight. No, you can't, because we think you shouldn't do it. And they say, well, I'm the parent, I want to do it. What criteria can solve that problem?
There are a number of criterion that we can use, but a lot of them are really will be considered non-academic, largely because, and we would have to be very selective, because a lot of this would be observational data that we would have to somehow draw. And also remember this, the behavior actions exhibited by a 4-year-old in a more sterile setting would be very different than how they might project in a setting of 15, 20, 25 students and little counterparts. So even then, it would be our best recommendation. And inevitably, there are going to be differences of opinion, regardless. But we could certainly explore that. There are some well-established kindergarten readiness assessments that we might be able to draw from to provide some more careful criteria. But again, to speak to Ms. Parker's point, we would have to engage in that very intentionally and very purposefully, so that we can really lay out something that's really really transparent and really clear about making those decisions and erring on the side, or making our recommendation as staff on the side of the well-being of a child. And just to go back to one of the slides, what would really put a stall on this is that we were kind of at a standstill for a few months there, not knowing what would happen with the early education block grant. And that was another little wrinkle that delayed things for us. And although we had a feeling that it ultimately would not, because we had heard enough from a lot of public advocacy groups that gave us a fair amount of confidence that things wouldn't change, it still caused some delays.
Ms. Lehmann.
So I don't know that I fully grasped everything. I feel like I kind of came in here having read the presentation and really feeling like option number 2 was the option that I was leaning towards. But, in part because I heard you say there is space. Whether it's one child or 2 children, I'm like, well, if there's space, I'd like to fill that space. But I don't think it can be done, because I think that the interest outweighs our capacity to do that. So I had thought that it would kind of work like some of the other spaces that we have, where it's a lottery system, where it's on, free and reduced lunch. What is it? And so you're nodding your head because it looks like that's not a possibility. That once once we modify it, then it has to include everyone. And I think that that's the fuzzy part for me too. So why can't 2 work now?
Why can't, I'm sorry, can you
Option
repeat
number
that?
2 work now. I'm not super clear.
It's because when we modify that, we would have to really adjust it. To give you an idea, when one particular district modified their board policy, they modified it just basically articulating that there would be what's considered a mid-year enrollment period.
Mm-hmm.
But they never articulated that there would be a lottery system, or that there would be anything that precluded any particular student or particular child from not being able to participate. This would, I think it would be some potential implications for us if we were just looking at filling 5 or 4. What right now might be open slots, which may be very different in September or October, as more children move into the area. The conditions would definitely change.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, Mr.
Yeah,
Herring?
I guess, to me, this is a topic that needs to come back and we need to take a vote on. I mean, we could use the approach we did earlier and just assume that everybody thinks one way and just say, don't bring it back, and therefore it won't happen. But I think our parents deserve us to make a decision one way or the other with the information, maybe a little bit more information on the number of spaces that are available, and maybe a little bit more on cost if we can come up with it, and some idea of the criteria. But I don't think we can just say, okay, great, we made your recommendations, we'll see you next year. I don't think that's fair to the parents.
And I would agree. I mean, I think that this item should come back and we have an opportunity to discuss it. I know there's, I received already an email about this particular topic, and I'm sure those two parents would love to hear what the discussion would be, if not, provide some public comment in terms of the item. So I'm sure that that would be a great opportunity for us to talk about it a little more, also hear from the public in terms of what their desires are as well.
So just so that, just a clarifying question, what exactly would you like to see in this coming back?
Ms. Limon.
I actually, and I'd like to see these 3 options spelled out with fiscal impacts and other impacts, educational impacts. I'd like to know also specifically how many spaces are available. I don't, and I think you've raised important concerns, but I think these are the 3, unless I'm hearing from the, unless only 2 of the 3 should come forward. I don't know.
Ms. Parker.
The only thing is, and I don't know if Mr. Matsuoka wants to weigh in on this, is timing. Because, I mean, to me, we could talk about number 2 for the 16-17 school year, but there is not the time for staff to start it. Although maybe that could be the recommendation that in the future it gets started in the fall. And so I don't know how much time it will take to come back with this fully, fleshed out, because I think I totally agree we need to have a vote on it, that this is something that parents need to be able to give public input on. It's just very late before the school year starts, and so I don't know how much of a rush, if we should be rushing or if we should take a little bit of time and have it come back in the fall, possibly including number 2 that could start mid-year if that's appropriate, and otherwise starting it for the 17-18 school year. That's my question mark.
And I would add that along with what Ms. Limon said in terms of having some fiscal impacts, maybe other pieces, just to even look at those in terms of what are the impacts in terms of our space, in terms of whether we could do it. I think those are all pertinent questions for each of those options.
So before I respond to that question, Dr. Ramirez, if we change the policy and a family applies and, we can discuss the appropriateness of placement, we have to provide a space.
That is my understanding, yes.
Right. And that's what's different about a lottery for a placement at one school versus the other. But this is a policy about acceptance into the TK-12 system. So if we go for option 2 or 3, we have to provide a seat. And that leads to fiscal implications, space, staffing, and boy, I tell you, those kinds of staffing decisions should be made like May, June. Granted, the policy stuff, the fiscal stuff was up in the air. I think for us to wait on a decision, then come back on August 9th, and we're opening school on, I don't know when we open school.
The 22nd, August
22nd. That's, honestly, I think operationally that's putting too much pressure on principals, on facilities. I think, I understand the community interest and families who would love this, but I think there's a pacing to this And I feel like we'd be postponing a decision and then rushing a decision. And I feel like we've had this for a while. There's some families that would like to take advantage of TK, but it's serving another small cohort, 1/4 of that age bracket. I think it's, my experience, TK is serving a need. My recommendation would be to go with 1, just given the time of year. And it just gives us time to look at this. So if you ask my recommendation, just operationally, I would say stay the course on 1. We almost need a decision tonight, because then we got to look at space, we got to look at staffing. Space has become the new surprise with TK. Like in my last district, it's like, oh, we're going from 3 TKs to 7, and then we were putting portables down, and then it's hard. You can't just drop a portable in 11 days. So.
So I understand why we would stay with 1 for the start of fall. I don't understand why we wouldn't bring back 2 or 3 in the fall to discuss, because 2 could potentially start in January, and I would like a legal opinion on 2, because I'm not hearing the certainty that I need to know that we would indeed have to provide a space. We have multiple ways in this district at multiple times to get into special programs, to get into schools, and we've outlined a lot of criteria. So if the law is super clear and it's like, yes, you have to provide a space, period, I'd like that legal opinion shared with us, because I think it's a game changer, at least for me. I'm like, well, if that's the law, then I don't know that it makes number 2 as realistic in my mind. So, I'm looking for that. It sounds like another school district and got into problems with it, but it also sounds like that school district didn't have any written policy in place. So if the solution to troubleshoot that problem is to have better and clearer policy, then I'd like to know that. But if bottom line is, hey, you do this, you have to provide a space, then I want to know that, because it changes how at least I think of 2 and 3 even being feasible options. Right now I'm like, maybe 2 could be in the future, but if the legal opinion says actually no, then I don't even know how much we can talk.
And just to clarify one point, I'm sorry if I misspoke earlier. I didn't mean to indicate that anybody had gotten in trouble. I was just alluding to the fact that in reviewing the board policy, there was no indication of any other criteria, lottery, or anything outside of the best interest of the child, and dates that would be used for enrollment and for qualifying or being within that range.
My one concern on that same topic is, right now, if Adams School doesn't have room for another 4th grader, we don't put them there. I mean, if we have very strict limits on how many kids can be in a classroom on a school campus. I wonder why this is any different. Even if they qualify, if we don't have space, I don't know how we can.
But Mr. Herron, we put that 4th grader someplace.
So, sure, if we have space.
No, they get somewhere. A 4th grader in our district gets a seat.
So let me, and I'll just make that clarification, Ms. Barker. Yes, that child would be entitled to a free and appropriate public education somewhere else in our district. And in doing so, we would also be responsible for transportation.
So this is the part where I guess because TK at one point was optional for the district, so I'm still trying to figure out, because this is a game changer, right? Like if this is, I can't speak for the board, but this is a game changer for me. Like if that is really what the law is clear and there's no exceptions to have to be, to provide a space and transportation, I think, I don't know that we can do that, whether we want to or not.
Well, and the part about that too is there's not funding, correct? So.
There's no funding until the child turns 5.
Right.
And then if anybody turns 5 after mid-April, it doesn't count. If he turned 5 the day before that mid-April date, he gets 1 day of funding.
Better be a good day.
Better learn a lot.
All right. I think you have some direction now.
Thank you
We
very
can
much.
move on. I'm just doing a really quick.
Well, are you interpreting that as, when you say has direction, we're going to go with number 1?
Board? Just want to make sure.
I think we don't have an option, to be honest with you. I think they're listed there, but I'm not sure that doing something different than number 1 by August
Yeah.
is an option. I think it's going to have to come back to us to see if 2 or 3 are even possibilities anytime after
Yeah.
August 2016. That's how I interpreted it.
I guess I still would like to give the public a chance to come August 9th and tell us why option 1 isn't the best choice. To just sit here and by non-speaking make a decision on this issue when we know parents are involved. So I mean, I don't mind a consensus number 1 might be the right way, but I'd like to ratify it at the August 9th meeting.
So put it on action.
Okay.
So let
Number
me.
1 recommendation on action.
So here's the direction that I'm hearing. We're gonna stay the course on option 1, but we'll bring back whatever legal findings we can get about, do we have to provide that seat? And then maybe that opens the door to option 2, because that's a mid-year. But I think the board needs clarity about the policy and the legal issues. I think you've heard the financial impact. So we'll operate on number 1 until August 9th. We'll bring this back and give you information. And then maybe we, at that point, consider option 3 for 17-18, assuming the state regs stay in place. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think we have plenty of time to consider option 3. You don't need to make that decision on August 9th, but I think, you've given your recommendation, you ask us for our advice. Our advice is come back on August 9th with number 1 as your recommendation and any other information you want to provide, but a very strong recommendation, number 1.
Yep.
And then if the public wants to come and talk about it, more power to them, they can. It still takes 3 votes. But I think that then gives them a chance to express their opinions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just doing a quick time check. It's about to be 9, and we have 2 items that are 20 minutes apiece. In which one of those items I think is going to take maybe perhaps a little more than 20 minutes. We're okay? Okay.
Keep going. It's a great one for his first meeting, right?
All right, so we'll move on to the discussion of secondary program of choice reports 2015-16. Mr. Matsuoka.
Dr. Drotti will present this report.
Thank you. Good evening, governing board members, Dr. Paz, President Paz, Mr. Matsuoka. With respect to the district academies, you have asked for a yearly update on the prior year's enrollment results and strategies each site has engaged in to attract a diverse population. I've invited the 3 comprehensive high school principals here to talk about the programs at their respective sites. So because of time, I've asked each of them to only present for 3 minutes for each program. So let's start with Mrs. Sean Carey from Dos Pueblos High School.
Good evening, board member. There you go. Should start the timer, maybe. It's a tall order. Okay. Good evening, board members and cabinet members and Superintendent Matsuoka, and again, welcome. I'm very proud to be here tonight to present about 2 robust and widely celebrated programs at Dos Pueblos High School, the International Baccalaureate Program and the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy. Both of these programs are characterized by rigorous and engaging curriculum delivered by highly dedicated faculty. And in both cases, the participating students enjoy the benefits of belonging belonging to a smaller community of learners while still being able to access the broad array of offerings, both curricular and co-curricular, in the larger high school setting. You're going to hear from me in just a few moments more about DPEA. Mr. Shire isn't in the country right now, but I thought it would be helpful for you to hear from the face of IB at DP, the IB coordinator, Matt Morant. So he's going to speak a little bit to you about IB. Is there a way to do that first and then come back to DPEA? Okay. Thanks, Brian. Next step.
Hopefully I don't knock this over. Good evening. I hope you're enjoying your summer. Yes. Talking about IB, you have the demographics here up on the board. We're really excited that, well, first before I start, I want to say I presented 2 years ago to the board in my first year as coordinator, and this August will be starting my third year as coordinator, and I am thoroughly loving it. The IB program is a phenomenal program. I'm enjoying all aspects of being coordinator and being a teacher. I've been an IB teacher for I think about 6 years now. So all parts of it, I'm thoroughly enjoying it and learning a whole bunch about the program that I'm just really excited about. I think we have some great energy and momentum, and I'm really excited about where I think we can go in the next few years. So demographics. We are really excited that you can see from the 12th to the 11th grade year, the Latino population had a significant boost in students partaking in IB classes and the socioeconomically disadvantaged. I think that is a direct result of some strategic planning that we've done by specifically reaching out to our Pathways program, to our AVID program, and encouraging those students and faculty members on staff that are in charge of those programs and administer them that IB is a program for those students. I know that it's not to the point where we would like it to be, where it's more representative of our whole student population and our local community, but I think that we are on a real path to making that happen. I can say that the AVID students that tested in this year's exam session did pass all of their exams, so we are seeing some of that evidence bear fruit in what those students are able to do. I also want to talk a little bit about the application and recruitment process. We changed a little bit of our application this year because we are adding a second pathway to the full IB diploma program, meaning that students have a second option for how they are going to pursue the full diploma. One is our traditional program, but this year we added, or well, for next year we're adding an environmental science classes, and that's considered an interdisciplinary class in the eyes of IB, which means that it counts for 3 curricular areas. So by doing that, we had to change a little bit of our application. And we had 22 students complete the application for the full diploma program. The application is more for us to get to know students that I don't have in class and our IB counselor, Mr. Jeff Sofro, doesn't have on his caseload. So there are no restrictions on applying to the program. Any student can apply, but that application gives us a little bit more information about who these students are, what they see as their skills and attributes that they bring to the program, and hopefully how they can mesh those desires and skills and goals with some of the options that IB provides. One component of IB that I don't think has gotten enough attention is the CAS component, the creativity, action, and service part of it. A lot of people know about the rigorous assessment and the rigorous curriculum. However, as part of my role as coordinator, I'm also the CAS coordinator, so I get a chance to hear and see what students are doing in their community service work. And in doing exit interviews with this year's group, I was blown away. So just a couple quick examples. We had one girl who did 4 years of volunteer service at the Kegel Autism Clinic at UCSB. And by the middle of her 4th year as a senior, she was advising incoming doctoral students on some of the processes of the autism clinic and how they did research and how they worked. So for a high school student to be able to engage at that level with doctoral students in something as specific as autism research is a phenomenal statement to her desire, her interests, and her ability as a leader in that arena. Every year we have a number of students that work at the Hearts Therapeutic program doing a range of different activities, from teaching students with disabilities about caring for animals, horseback riding, keep up with horses and that realm. So there were 2 students that did that this year. And then one in particular that kind of blew me away the most is a student who has a younger sibling who had cancer as a 7-year-old. And an organization in town called Kiki Paddles, I think is what it is, puts on a paddling fundraiser from Santa Barbara Harbor out to the Channel Islands. It's a one-day event, but there's about a year in planning that takes place in order for that program to happen. So this student's younger sibling got cancer when they were 7, and they were chosen by this organization to have the benefits and proceeds of the event go to their research and help their family with the financial costs of cancer treatment. So when he became an IB diploma candidate, that's the organization that he chose to pursue his CAS program with. And he became a student board member and helped plan 2 years of paddling events from Santa Barbara Harbor to the Channel Islands, and then helped choose and select the families that got the proceeds of that fundraising. So along with the CAS program, we sent about 8 IB students and I believe 1 other student to Vietnam this summer to work with the Peace Village in Vietnam with families that are affected by exposure to Agent Orange. That could be including birth defects, developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, etc. So they went on a 14-day trip from June 15th to 28th, and so they got back a couple weeks ago, and we're in the process of following up with the reflection portion of that trip. And I'm going to hopefully propose to have that trip occur again this following school year in August or September board meeting. Lastly, 2 more things. We got feedback from our second self-study. IB does a very in-depth self-study of each IB program every 5 years. This last year, we concluded our second self-study and had a number of points of feedback that they gave us. We had 6 commendations, and I didn't know how to interpret the feedback, so I actually called the North America office for IB and asked them if they could explain it. And Marissa answered the phone. Me and Marissa are on a first-name basis. I call all the time and get her. But she said, yeah, I actually was reviewing your report yesterday, and I've never seen a report with only 1 matter to be addressed, but 6 commendations. So I feel pretty excited about that. The areas of strengths that they pointed out is our written curriculum and our classroom teaching. Our exam preparation, the staff's knowledge, not just myself or our teachers, but our general staff's knowledge of IB and the IB philosophy. The openness of our library and Heather Magner in providing an open area for research and study for not only all of our students, but especially the IB program. Areas for improvement. We only had 1 matter to be addressed, and Marissa at IB office said that she very rarely sees that, but our 1 matter was collaboration and planning, that we need to give more evidence of vertical and horizontal integration of not only skills, content, but more of an interdisciplinary approach to our program. Sorry, I wrote out some notes on my phone real quick. Reaching out to our school population and our local community was one of the points that they highlighted. And I think in reaching out to the AVID population, to the Pathways population, trying to reach out more and create a more sustainable relationship with Goleta Valley Junior High as our primary feeder school. And then one recommendation they had was to look at our local K-8 middle schools and make sure that those schools are aware of what the IB program is and the options that IB offers to some of those schools. So that's one of our goals for the upcoming year. Supporting exam costs. IB exams are expensive. There's a $164 registration fee and then a $113 exam fee for each exam. So thinking of creative ways to help aid in some of those exam fees. And then adding math and science courses, and then creative scheduling with the theory of knowledge course. And then exam results is the last point that I will talk about. We had, for the 4th straight year, 100% diploma completion rate. So all of the students that sat for their IB diplomas received their diploma. And then English, French, Spanish, and economics had 100% pass rate as well. And these are old statistics. The results for this May's session just came out last week. But once again, we are above the world average in, I believe, all but one. I think math is the only subject that we were not above the world average in. That was more than 3 minutes. I apologize. Any questions?
Ms. Parker.
I would just ask maybe for my fellow board members to maybe we could hold questions till the very end on all of these, just in the interest of time, because otherwise we'll be here for an hour and a half.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, and congratulations. And in the interest of time, and I know the familiarity of the board members or most folks with the DPA, I'll be very brief, and we'll be catching up to speed very promptly. Superintendent Matsuoka about the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy. I'll just highlight sort of where we are in time with DPEA. This recently graduated class of 2016 was the first class to go through all 4 years of the integrated and innovative DPEA curriculum in the Ealing Center for Engineering Education. So that, of course, was a game changer for that program. It changed the curriculum, it changed the learning experience for that group and for all classes behind them. So it was a really special class to graduate. They were also the first class that had exclusively at the senior year the mechatronics experience as their capstone engineering experience. So I wanted to highlight that while expanding and maintaining gender balance and while continuing to focus on more proportionality across other subgroups, that those were some highlights from our recent graduating class. The other thing I wanted to say is that this class really, and the leadership within the academy, the adult leadership really evidence that they successfully met some obstacles associated with master scheduling and personnel in the past year. So there were a lot of challenges there, and they were successfully met. One other thing that I will highlight, and as you know, and I don't say this facetiously, that Mr. Shire is on a mission to transform public education as we know it. So somewhere out in another latitude, he is celebrating the fact that I'm saying that again. And he has very long-range designs on that. So you'll notice in the very detailed report that you already received what some of the specific ideas are around how to really make a difference sort of up the watershed and at the elementary level. And so there's a lot of really specific and focused outreach. We talked about this last year as well, happening within the SBUSD and GUSD in the elementary levels and in private schools as well. And the other thing, the newest thing to celebrate and highlight is the success of the pilot sabbatical program. So a teacher from Adams Elementary this last year spent a year in training within DPEA. It's a model teachers from Crane did as well. It's a model we're seeking to continue. In the words of Sean Fetterbush, who heard from Amir Shire that we wanted to train him for a year, give him a master's in the maker world. And when we talk about 21st century learning, we're talking about exactly what happens in DPA, the kind of open-ended problem solving. There's a real-world product at the end, and it all happens in a team context where the adults themselves are the lead learners and truly define that. Sean says, working with the seniors during the capstone project, I've witnessed the frustration of failure and the joy that ensues with overcoming failure. I've been amazed at the level of professionalism and maturity these students have expressed during the design, manufacturing, and assembly of these projects. One of the most powerful elements of this program and this style of project-based learning, where the staff is actively participating in the project, is that the students witness the mentors failing, revising, and rebuilding just as the students do. The mentors share and model the same language and processes that the students practice, which reinforces that practice of design, testing, re-engineering, and retesting to arrive at a final product. My personal appreciation and pride of this project is immense, and from the vision of Mr. Shire and the district community to the daily lesson learned from the professional staff. He knows that this has been the most powerful learning environment he's ever participated in. He says it's been an honor to participate. It's my goal moving forward to skillfully share and extend DP's goal of transforming education in his role as he returns to the elementary setting. So that's really sort of where Amir is living now on the bleeding edge of trying to make a difference throughout our entire system. The last thing I'll say is that these two programs have very replicable attributes school-wide. wide. So we want every student at DP to enjoy rigorous curriculum delivered by highly dedicated staff. And I'm proud to say that happens at DP quite a bit, but there's always room for improvement. And these two programs, IB and DPEA, are certainly focal points of best practices. This year during our staff meeting time, we actually had all faculty rotate through some experiences with the DPEA and IB faculty, and that was really well received. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate your attention.
Next up, let's bring up Santa Barbara High School with Dr. Vecchio.
You hear that, Dr. Vecchio?
Doctor.
Good evening, or good night. Anyways, board members, Superintendent Matsuoka, welcome to Santa Barbara, cabinet members. The academies at Santa Barbara High School are in great shape. And what I want to do tonight is, I know you have the reports, but I wanted to just go through real quick, because I know we're short on time, give you the strengths, just a couple bullet points of the strengths at each academy, areas that we are concerned about, and then some new things that are happening, and it shouldn't take me too long. Matt Academy, if you don't mind me, can I bounce around to Matt Academy is serving more students than it ever has, 350 students. It's our largest dual enrollment program. The students in that program will receive 25 college credits after completion of MAD Academy. They've built a real community in MAD with a concrete effort that focuses on social emotional intelligence, team building, collaboration, community connections, and professionalism. In VADA, a couple of the strengths I wanted to highlight with you, they've had a real strategic focus on integrated curriculum, and their teachers are really great at collaborating and bringing creativity and artistic experiences into the core courses. As you know, it's a partnership academy, so they do have English, social studies, and science as part of the VADA curriculum. Excellent range of diversity in the VADA program, and they're very proud of that, and they continue to hold that as a very high priority within their program. And then Computer Science Academy, or CSA, they have done an excellent job of course development. They are, as you know, 2 years old as an academy, but their ability to build courses, they now are offering in exploring computer science, a couple sections of that now. AP Computer Science, we've now expanded to 2 sections of that. We are offering the computational art course that you've heard about before, and we are also offering mobile programming as our capstone course, and then we have the pre-calc with Python, where students are exposed to Python programming language within the pre-calc class. And they're also very strong at community outreach and making partnerships within our community. They got a large amount of money to start up the academy from various sources within our community, so that was very helpful. And then challenges, MAD's challenge, one of the main challenges is still the enrollment diversity, and 5 years ago they were at about 15% Latino enrollment. They're now at about 26, although I think it'll be around 30 next year. We're seeing some numbers from freshman class coming in that are much higher. We're not really satisfied with that progress. That's 5 years, and it's growth, but it's not something that we're satisfied with. I am very intent about, and repeat this quite often, that the East Side and West Side families are missing out on the academy, and the academy program is missing out on them. And so that's something that we're going to continue to explore. The freshman class, our MAD parent group and our MAD leadership talk about this issue all the time now. It wasn't something that was even spoken about 5 years ago, so I'm very proud of their work in this area. For example, freshman class coming in, we have 52% white, 39% Latino, and 9% other. So that's roughly 48% other than white enrollment. And we also have 42% male in the freshman class and 58% female. So VADA's challenge is facility and their 9th grade expansion. They are in need of upgrading a facility, so we'll be talking about that over the next few years of what we can do for VADA to gain them some space. And CS Academy, their challenge is staffing and finding qualified teachers that are able to do coding, and especially as they want to expand into the core subjects for coding, we just can't find the core subject teachers that really have a background in coding. So that's been a big challenge for them. And then new this year that I think is worth mentioning is that every academy and every program of choice at our school site engaged in a Spanish-speaking pathways /academy family night. And what we did is had a bunch of families there. We toured them, individual tours through the academies. They got presentations in the academies in Spanish and the programs of choice. And that, I think, really helped raise awareness among our local families of what we have to offer at Santa Barbara High. CSA Academy just hired a full-time female teacher. So that is really something we're celebrating. We do have an enrollment issue with females in the CS Academy, so we think that'll help. And in MAD, we're in the very beginning stages of developing a summer multimedia camp that will serve East and West Side kids. We'd like to do that next summer, but again, we're in the very, very beginning stages of that. So I don't know what that'll look like, but we would love to use that facility during the summertime with our kids in our community. And then we added the 9th grade, but that's something that you're aware of. We added the 9th grade in both MAD and VADA this year. So, and finally, in closing, I'd just like to say that I thank you for your support of programs of choice and academies. My son's going into 7th grade, so he'll soon be exploring these options, and I'm just kind of crossing my fingers he won't want to do Apple or DPEA, because I'm trying to get him to go to Santa Barbara High. So anyways, thank you for your support of these programs for our kids.
Thank you.
Next up, we have San Marcos High School Principal, Mr. Ed Behrens.
Good evening, school board, Superintendent Masioka, and cabinet. Thank you for this opportunity to share about 3 amazing programs at San Marcos High School. And I'll follow basically the same format that Dr. Becchia followed of strengths, areas for development, and new developments. And I'll start with the Health Academy. The Health Academy at San Marcos High School has a 15-year history of serving students who have an interest in the area of health careers. And some of the strengths are our partnership with Santa Barbara City College and our partnership with Cottage Hospital. Students are able to complete their certified nursing assistant diploma through City College while in high school, which is pretty amazing. And it's also extremely relevant for all of those students who are interested in health careers. Some of our areas for development are we're exploring a pre-med pathway. We'd like to add medical chemistry. So far we've been able to add medical biology. And we're also looking to increase our male population in our Health Academy. Some of the new developments are we are adding a new teacher in the area of anatomy and physiology for next year. And one new thing that I did with all the academy directors this year was I set regular meetings with the 3 academy directors and myself to discuss all sorts of policies and how they're doing things. And it was great for them to have kind of their own PLC and to talk about how they're doing things and to share ideas. So that's something new that I did at San Marcos High School this year. The next academy that I'd like to talk about is the Apple Academy, which is the Accelerated Academic Program for Leadership and Enrichment. And some of the student outcomes that Mr. Nielsen outlined in the report that you have are some of the strengths of the program. And the team building and extracurricular activities that students are able to participate in are strengths. Some of the areas for development, They're looking to provide more in-service for the cohort teachers of the Apple Academy, and they continue to focus on outreach to Latino students. One of the things that I did this year is I went with Eric Nilsson to La Cumbre Junior High, and we met with some of the teachers there and met with Joanne Keynes, and we're working to try and get more students to apply to the Apple Academy from La Cumbre Junior High. So that's an ongoing focus. New developments from Apple are the cyber tutorial. The cyber tutorial is where Apple students are actually tutoring students at El Camino Elementary School, and that's been very successful. Another new development is the Apple Senior Living Tech Tutor Program, and so they go to senior housing, and they basically teach senior citizens how to use technology such as Facebook, Skype, FaceTiming, and other apps. And so some of the successes from that program are that some of the senior citizens were able to find friends that they had never been able to find or have or hadn't connected with in many, many years. And so that was pretty awesome to see that these students and the senior citizens really liked it and the students really liked it. So that was a really fun program that Apple started this year. The next program that I'd like to highlight is our Entrepreneurship Academy, and this year was our first graduating class from the Entrepreneurship Academy. Some of the strengths of the Entrepreneurship Academy are the partnership with Santa Barbara City College, including the Scheinfeld Entrepreneurship Center, and the enrichment activities, and obviously the relevance of the curriculum for students who are interested in business careers. So some areas that we're working on developing for the Entrepreneurship Academy are obtaining great instructors that connect with students and also meet the minimum qualifications for Santa Barbara City College. That's been an ongoing struggle, and we're working to improve that. And also, now that we've had students go through all 3 years of the program, we're going to continue to work on making the program more coherent. But this year, we're really excited about a few things. One is the lunch speaker series that we had local business speakers come in and talk during lunch to the Academy students and any other students that were interested, and we had great speakers from the community. One of the speakers was Allison Berline, who's the creator of Inogen, which is a very successful startup company in Santa Barbara, so she was able to come and talk to the students. That was outstanding. This year was our first year that we had seniors in the Entrepreneurship Academy, so they were able to participate in the Kids Helping Kids program, and as you know, the Kids Helping Kids program was able to gross $450,000 this year, and they're giving those proceeds back to needy kids, including paying for AP exams for students who aren't able to do that at San Marcos High School, and just helping other students at San Marcos, but not only at San Marcos, globally also. And lastly, this year, we had our seniors do their capstone project, which was the Scheinfeld Center New Venture Challenge, and the San Marcos High School students received first and second place in the challenge, the first year that they competed, and we're very, very excited about that. And so this was kind of like one of the dreams I had for San Marcos when I became principal, and it's so wonderful to see the dream actually come to fruition. The idea was we would have students who could start businesses, and this year we had 2 students that I want to show you. That is the first dollar that they earned on their business that they actually started this year. And they started a business called Dulce Cultura, and they sell aguas frescas. And they actually have started their business, And one of the teachers who's teaching in the Entrepreneurship Academy is Sergio Villa. Sergio Villa has an amazing story. We met him through the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and he's continuing to teach finance, and he's helping these two young ladies. They want to start bottling their aguas frescas, and they want to become a huge business in Santa Barbara, so we are so excited about the outcomes of the Entrepreneurship Academy.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want all the principals to come up and then you just ask questions at that point, or?
Ms. Parker?
I'll just speak generally, and just in the interest of time. I mean, I appreciate how much attention and effort everybody is putting in. The students in all of the academies are doing well, which is key. Again and again, we have the issue with it reflecting the demographics of students. Small numbers, so sometimes that's hard to really look at it over time. But because my concern is I'm seeing some real progress, like I'll see real progress, or you'll talk about real progress in the freshman class, but does that last, or are we just going to see this dip up and down that we sometimes see? But I know that you know where the issues are, and I know that you'll continue to look. I still believe that a lot of it is around making it culturally relevant for students, and also application barriers. And so for those that have not made the progress that they should have, I hope that they will. But other than that, I don't have any questions.
Ms. Edelson?
My comment also, I think, applies across the board. First of all, it's very exciting to see all these programs and just how they've grown and made our district so much variety and access to things that are really wonderful. A concern I often hear from the community on some of the programs is the fundraising component. And I know that a lot of these academies have built with parent involvement and foundations and the momentum of that, but then the pressure that that creates for parents who don't have means to contribute. And I just wonder if there's progress in that direction. I know maybe Dr. Becchio could speak to that. I've particularly heard it about the MAD Academy. Not to point a finger, but what can you tell me?
It's a continuous conversation that we have. I know we've made a lot of progress in our district on the pay-to-play issue. It is something that we very much considered when we started the CS Academy, as you know, and really wanted to have a way in which we could raise funds but not have it be on the backs of our parents that are within those programs, and we were quite successful so far with the CS Academy. MAD Academy right now, the Parent Foundation is actually considering that. What do we do? They want to have a diverse program, and we've talked a lot about that, but they also know that what's getting in the way of that is the type of fundraising that they have to do and the events that they put on in order to sustain the program. So there's conversations right now within the MAD Academy Foundation about how to sustain that. I think they hired a part-time development director this year just to search and start looking for different fundraising schemes.
I think what comes to my mind is what really do they, I mean, yes, if you hire special people or staff to do extra things, but yet the district is supplying teachers and there's a location. So I think, is there a way to sort of reevaluate what is the academy in terms of needs so that we're not...
Well, I've talked to the foundation parents about their either need to find ways to raise those revenues, or they need to look at the other side, which is how do we cut expenses. And so they are, I think they're wrestling with that right now. Do we need this staff member, or do we need that extra thing? Or, the MAD Academy they do a lot of things within that academy, and there's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of extra trips and things like that. So they have a large budget, and I do believe that is, it is getting in the way of of being a place where a family that maybe doesn't have the means would go in there and go, well, maybe this isn't a place for me. So we're just struggling through that and having a lot of discussion and dialogue about how to deal with that.
Good. Thank you.
So, yeah. And, you know, and then the other thing that that happens too is we have all of this literature that goes out through any of our programs has to go through my office, and I review it and approve it. So if it's a fundraising letter or has anything to do with fundraising, it has to go through my office. It's probably similar at the other two high schools as well. But what does happen sometimes is there are parents that don't understand how important the pay-to-play issue is. Parents within, let's just say the Matt Academy, it could be any other academy, but they don't really understand how important and critical that issue is. And so they might send something out via email about giving, or it's, hey, did you pay your money yet, or that kind of thing. And so I think we need to also continue to educate the larger groups of parents about how critical it is that we, while we're raising funds, it's all voluntary and there is no pay to play and there's no cost for any of these programs. So.
Thank you.
As long as that chart's up there, a number just stuck out at me, the $165,000 yearly funding to cover the loan servicing to the MAD building. Have we had a report lately as to where that fundraising stands? 'Cause originally we had $700,000 in naming parts of the building, which would have left about $700,000 to raise. How long do they think they have to keep going with 165 to meet that 10-year obligation with the $700,000 seed money that got started with?
Yeah, I don't have those figures. I'm not sure if, I don't know who would have those. Meg, would you have those?
It'd be nice to have a report on that fundraising aspect of the
Let me, you know what, actually, let me check with Dan Williams on that, and I'll try to get something drafted up that you guys could look at to see, you know, where they're at, how many, what are they, 10, they have 7 years left or something
Yeah,
like
but
that?
they had $700,000 to start with, and if they're raising 165, it should be like 4 years.
Yeah, so I can get some information to you, that's no problem.
Ms. Lima.
Thank you. So I have a question for Mr. Matsuoka and Meg Jate. I work with a lot of college students, and one of the barriers to increase enrollment for students who are coming from working class families is financial aid. There are two categories that we look at when we are amongst the many that we're looking at, which include students who qualify for free and reduced lunch and English learners, both of which are categories that the local control funding formula asks us to focus on. Is there an opportunity to provide, and I don't know what we would call it, it's the conceptual version of financial aid for those two categories? Because in the end, those are the two categories, even more than race, that have even more barriers to access all of these programs. And so I want to be clear, I don't know that it's doable. I don't even know that this board would consider it, but I want to know. I mean, local control funding formula was to target certain subgroups. This is my 6th year in this presentation, and I've thrown out every idea that I can think of, and it's not making, I think, the changes that we'd like to see, but it's not because of lack of effort. So at this point, I'm like, all right, folks, can we think outside the box? Because I like these programs, you meet these students, they're awesome students, and you want more students to be a part of them. So how do we get more students to be a part of them that are more reflective of each of the school communities? I would love, Mr. Matsuoka, for you to take it back to the cabinet, come up with ideas. I don't know what else the board can offer, but I have to say this is one of my harder presentations because we're not making the headway that all of us in this room want to make. I have probably talked to each of you as principals about this with your program coordinators I've met. I mean, some of the ideas we hear is they did come out of this, but we're not making the changes. And it's just so hard to look at great programs that have great opportunities for students and see that yes, our Latino students are not making waves, but really, if you're poor, your access to this is even harder. If you're an English learner, your numbers are lower. And so, I can only think of the local control funding formula. I'm super open to other ideas. Again, I want to be clear that I don't even know that this board would consider anything like that. I just want to know what's even on the table to move this forward.
I think we'd have to translate the idea of financial aid into the K-12 system, because it's almost saying that it's a pay-to-play environment. And I think financial aid would have to be phrased, how could we provide that support internally from our district so that it isn't a barrier? Yeah, we couldn't call it financial aid because it implies tuition.
Right.
It implies that there's costs. Yeah, but the concept, yes. Now, I mean, I have this much information, what I heard tonight, so I love the presentations. I look forward to understanding the history, the financing, the access. So I'll get on the ground with these principals and learn. But it sounds like they've been excellent programs, but still the reflection of access is an issue.
Well, after 8 years of these programs or reports, I can tell you we're now at a stage where we have the data. And it's been 8 years progressively getting to this point. Mm-hmm. So the data that we get is absolutely tremendous now. And the format, and everybody's got the same boilerplate kind of topics to answer, and they do a beautiful job answering it. I would say in Apple, why don't we have more boys? Too many girls in Apple. Let's get some boys in Apple. Thank you.
Board, any other questions, comments? Mr. Ross.
So just a quick question for the board. So we updated the report format in response to your feedback last time. We incorporated feedback around breaking up the demographics by cohort and adding questions around the application process. So does the board have any other feedback or direction for us on the format itself?
I'll just say it's much better. Thank you.
As I said, I think it's the best we've ever had. So if you did that, great. Thank you.
Team effort.
Team effort. Okay.
Thank you. So we can move on to the next item is presentation discussion of the 3-year cultural proficiency plan.
Thank
you all.
I know it's getting late in the night, so I'll try to be as efficient as I can with this presentation.
Is there a time element on this one?
There's supposed to be 20 minutes.
No. Is there time imperative on this one?
Not necessarily, but it does. There are implications. There are implications on. Like an MOU that you will be talking about, and there's several people I know they wanted to hear the presentation. So I'll talk. So the cultural proficiency plan. In this presentation, I'd like to provide a 30,000 view or perspective of what we're trying to accomplish with cultural proficiency. Perhaps the district's strategic action plan 4E best states what we're attempting to do. I'll read this out loud, the strategic plan out loud, just so the public can hear. We're attempting to ensure that every school has completed a cultural competency/proficiency assessment of its school community. Each school will provide input in the development of the district's professional learning plan to ensure cultural proficiency at every school. Evidence of cultural proficiency will include indicators in achievement, an increase in enrollment in advanced coursework, an increase in attendance, a decrease in referrals for student discipline, and appropriate referrals to special education. So in that statement, there is a lot to unpack. And our cultural proficiency plan actually is an attempt to operationalize what's written on this in the strategic plan here. And I would imagine a lot of your questions about, I would argue that a lot of your questions or concerns about access to academies is surrounded with this work. And a part of the strategy has to be that we have to deal with other issues that a lot of times people were afraid to talk about, providing access to our programs. We have taken the position that all educators in our system are well-intentioned. There isn't a single person out there we can point to that says that I'm here to go to work to hurt students. We're not going to get anybody like that. If you are, kids will bring it out of you probably within the first 30 seconds of work. So that we know that doesn't exist. When you also ask people what do they want, they will tell you they don't want to see a gap in achievement. They don't want to see disproportionality in access, engagement, and discipline. But our outcomes actually suggest that those things exist. So there's something going on that we have to identify and work on to figure out what is actually happening in between our intentions and our current outcomes. And this is where the work occurs, is in our behaviors. So our attempt in cultural proficiency is to work on our attitudes, perceptions, beliefs, assumptions, understanding of history. There's a lot that's in there that will that's often serve as barriers, and we have to go through a journey of unearthing that. And an educator's attitude on whether they want to use data for learning matters. Okay, if they don't want to use data, but they don't want to engage in it because they don't believe it's important, is actually going against things that would help us resolve the issues of that we see in disproportionality. So there's a lot of activities out there that we can be engaged in, that's research-based, that we can be engaged in, but we often don't in education. And the school districts and the teachers, educators that actually figure that out, you don't see the disproportionality. And we have examples of that throughout our district with individuals that are working at this. So this is where the work is, and in order to address and unpack the issues around our behaviors and our attitudes, perceptions, we have partnered with an organization called Just Communities, and they are actually helping us really take us through a journey of self-reflection and looking at data, to look at data and also understand historical barriers that often exist that are uncomfortable to talk about. So I've invited Jared Schwartz, the director of the organization, to come explain what the organization has helped us with. And then I'll also invite Sean Carey, one of our high school principals that has probably the most, that has done the most work around this area, and she will explain what this work actually means to her and her leadership and Dos Pueblos' ability to move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Drati, and good evening, everyone. Superintendent Matsuoka, very good to meet you. Welcome to the community, and board members, thank you very much for investing in this work for the last several years. What's up in front of you is really kind of the heart of the strategy, the overall strategy around the Cultural Proficiency and Equity Initiative. The idea is, well, the belief is that educators, students, and parents together have a lot of the tools, have a lot of the knowledge that they need to improve their schools and to improve outcomes. The challenges are getting them to the place where they can talk about them, when they can have conversations about these ideas, where they have a common language around talking about both the barriers and the existing successes and the recommendations for moving forward. And so our programs are designed to really do that. We have programs specifically designed for educators, others for parents, and others for students. Each of those programs, though, has some common elements. Each of those programs build trust and a sense of urgency among the participants. Each of those programs get those participants looking at school achievement data, both academic and social-emotional data, to really understand and unpack what's going on in their school, what's going on in the district. Each of the programs helps the participants develop a common language for talking about these issues in a way that they can really communicate. Each of them also introduce the participants to evidence-based strategies for improving instruction and learning and outcomes. Each of the programs helps the participants look at the link between racism, institutional racism, learning, teaching, instruction, and outcomes. And And each of the programs gets those individuals looking at what's working now for all students, what's not working for certain groups of students, and what kinds of recommendations and ideas do they have for improving outcomes and improving engagement. And then finally, through ongoing work after each strategy, after each program, we help those participants then implement the ideas that they've had. And finally, the last piece is really to then bring educators, students, and parents together to work across kind of those traditional role barriers to really be able to work as teams and support and in partnership to improve their schools. And what we're seeing is that those improvements are happening. We're seeing them happening pretty much in every area. Since we started piloting the initiative in 2005, we've seen outcomes for Latino students improve in virtually every area. I do have copies of a report that was done several years ago in 2013 showing the link between the work that we're doing and some of the improvements in outcome. Obviously, there's a lot of efforts going on in the district. There's a lot of partners in the community, and so not all of the achievement gains are due to this work. However, we do have an outside independent evaluator that shows that there's been a strong link between this work and the outcomes the district has seen so far. So I think with that, I'll turn it back, and then I'll be available for questions, and I'll pass this around as well.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. We plan to come back at another board meeting to actually talk about some of the outcomes that we have been able to gather, so you can see the impact of the work. But I do have one of the principals here, Sean Carey, she probably has 60% of her staff that have gone through one of these trainings. And it has really revolutionized what they've been able to do at Dos Pueblos, and I'll have Sean speak a little bit to that. Maybe you can even share personally what this journey has meant to you, and then talk about what it means to your leadership at Dos Pueblos.
Good evening again. Journey is the right word. I find that whenever I'm asked to speak about this, which is increasingly lately, that I have to really reflect on where I am in time and space, because it is certainly something that each of us is sort of on a lifelong journey that is informed by our own personal and individual experiences and background and identity, and it's a dynamic process that changes as we grow, and hopefully as we are growing alongside others, and growth can't happen without some discomfort. And so this is also a place where one has to be vulnerable and strong at the same time, because of the discomfort that is important and necessary in order for the growth to happen. So I try to model that. That's a lot of what it's like for me personally, and that looks a little different every year as I grow and encounter new discomforts and reminders of humility and the importance of vulnerability. What I would just say that is, what I would say to offer you from where I am my journey in July 2016, at this point is 6 years in as being the principal of Dos Pueblos, but nearly 20 and as a staff member there. I've seen a school that has gone from a place that very much looks on paper and feels like two separate schools for two separate populations, to a school where that is not necessarily at all the case. It's not that there aren't pockets that look and feel that way. We certainly just finished discussing some places where we still have room to grow in that regard. But it is not atypical now for me to have to, look around for other kinds of context clues in a classroom or at a co-curricular activity, other than just who is there as the students participating, in order to know whether I'm dealing with a student, an at-level class or a college level class. And so I see anecdotally and on paper some really significant gains. I think it's because one thing mainly when it comes to Just Communities that I want to highlight, which is that and it's true of other programs as well, but I think a real hallmark of the work done with Just Communities is that it is deeply relational work. So we know that relationships go to the heart of what we all do in the school setting, and that whether we are students or staff members or parents in the school setting, if we're not feeling safe, valued, or even celebrated, then it's difficult for us to engage at our highest levels. And as Jared said, having the time and the space and the structure for engaging in conversations that are difficult, but ultimately that really, really build relationship and trust is just, it's the key ingredient. When that happens and when you have enough critical mass of people for whom that's happening. And we are there more recently at DP, and not arrived by any means, but certainly we've arrived at a place of critical mass. Then you experience things like what Dr. Becchio talked about before. You're able to just engage in conversations and just have the conversation that needs to be had, as opposed to the conversation that gives you the entree into the conversation that really needs to be had. And so that's the greasing of the wheels that this type of training provides is I mean, it's incredibly valuable. I would say that there are two game changers recently, as I talked to you, July 2016, and then I'll sit down. One is that we have done a good job engaging our staff. We have room to grow still. We have done an excellent job engaging our parents through partly through Just Communities and partly through other organizations and efforts. But what has been, for me, in the desk that I sit in, a real game changer for all stakeholder groups has been, in the last 2-3 years, through Talking in Class, engaging the voice of the students. And not just engaging their voice, particularly secondary level, but then inviting them to participate in leading and influencing decisions that get made at our schools, so that we're focused on that middle column of, not just seeing the problem, which is the outcome column, wanting to change it, which is the intent column, but actually drilling down and inviting students to participate as equal participants in identifying and brainstorming and problem solving around the challenges. That's been tremendously beneficial, and we've been equipped to do that because of Talking in Class. And the second thing that's happened most recently, and I would say we're still in the very emerging stages of both of these two things, is me being able to turn over the onus of responsibility for leading the work, from it being housed in my office, which I think was true up until this most recent school year, to truly a committee that I am on, but that I am an equal participant with, alongside parents, staff, and students. That I'm very, as I said, we're just at the beginning stages of that, but that feels very real and authentic now at Dos Pueblos, and it's because of the capacitation over many years that we've received from being participants in Just Communities programming. So I don't know if you have any questions for me, but that would be what I would share.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So what you see down here, I think Mr. Schwartz mentioned about it, there's IEE, which is focuses on staff, administration, and I believe we have several board members that have attended that as well. Talking in Class, it's same conversation, but it focuses on students. And then we have PETA, and CLI is also student focused, and PETA is the same conversations, but focuses on parents. And it's been a powerful process. So with that said, now what? And now what? We have all of the graduates from those programs, we call them allies. We're allies. So I'm an ally. We have members here that are on board that are allies. We have allies. So a lot of times these allies are very anxious. They want to do something, and a lot of them are on an individual basis. Some have clustered, as they have in Dos Pueblos, and committees, and they're trying to do the work. But we're after a bigger fish in this work. We want a more coordinated effort in an attempt to transform the culture in a district. And that so we created a committee about a year ago called the Cultural Proficiency Equity Committee. These are allies and also members of community that understand this work. And then we established a mission for that committee, is to create a culturally proficient and equitable district that meets the academic and social-emotional needs of all students. We will do this by establishing conditions for continuous improvement through individual and institutional reflection, engagement in courageous conversations, and strategic action. So this group has been working for a year now, and all volunteer, people that are volunteer charged, but we wanted to establish a way of communication so that sites can engage in this conversation, and we established a rubric. We wanted to establish common language in the form of a rubric. You have samples of it. I think the samples you have focus in on just the definitions of behaviors and attitudes from what we consider exclusionary to behaviors that one may consider as tokenization. And I know you guys had a chance to read this already, and I'm trying to respect the time here. So, and over to socially just behaviors and attitudes. So that definition, we feel that This is vetted through all the different people that have gone through this activity. We've taken it to IEE, we've taken it to talking with students that are talking in class, and also PETA parents, to kind of vet the language to see if it actually impacts movement or understanding. And once we got the nod that it is actually, the definition is actually doing that, is doing what we wanted to do, we have said, okay, we're gone as far as we could at this point with that. And then we also identified other focus areas. I'm going to go back. We also identified other focus areas to provide examples on with the same continuum. We want to focus on achievement, school climate, parent engagement, curriculum and instruction, human resource practices, and discipline. And there's a rubric for all those different areas. You only have, I believe, 2 for you to look at as a sample, but we're almost done. It's still in draft form, all of them, but we're almost done with the entire document. The idea of using that document would be, say, for example, you take, say, Sean Carey wants to engage Dos Pueblos High School in this conversation. This is a document in which she can now share with her staff to actually look at. The staff can rate themselves or where they think they are, actually come up with action plans to continue to improve on their journey from wherever they think they are to the final piece, which is the social justice piece. That journey allows for a great conversation, courageous conversations, and as I mentioned, there's a lot of people that think what they're doing, what their actions, their attitudes may be supportive, but may not be, but they're well-intentioned. So this document allows people to actually go through that reflection and understanding. So when you actually make a statement like, I don't see color in the classroom, and that's you know what the intention is. It's a good intention, because you're saying we're all human beings, but just that very perspective there does not allow for others to actually learn about themselves and understand about their history. And so, but we want people to understand that saying that is not necessarily a good thing, and why. And this document allows for that understanding to occur. Once, for example, Dos Pueblos goes through, and I'm going to use Sean Carey's here, I'm using an example. They actually come up with an action plan. We actually want IEE graduates or allies to come and either affirm or make recommendations on Dos Pueblos' action plan of improvement. And then from there, they will then do some work and then go through the same exercise maybe 3 years later to see if they actually made that improvement. We think this activity will allow for continuous engagement and for people to be in constant conversation about this issue. And I think if we actually do this the right way, those issues of access in those academies, and whether it be in sports programs or disproportionality and all these different things that we look at, I think we're starting identifying some of those barriers, and people start actually changing it. So with that said, I'll stop here and just leave it up to any questions you may have.
Board, questions, comments? Ms. Parker?
I just want to say how much I appreciate all the work that's been going on, and obviously I've had the chance to experience IEE myself and know what a huge impact it has. But just in terms of bringing it to the day-to-day practice for our students and seeing it move student engagement, student participation, and student outcomes. And I feel like we're hit over the head in the wider cultural discussion that's going on in the United States. The work that we're doing here is so important, and I'm so grateful that we are doing that work. So thank you.
Mr. Herron.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had IEE, but I have been at many talking in class, PETA, the readouts of IEE as to how the groups present what they have done the 5 days. And I can tell you, when you sit through those things, even without the IE, it's something that hits you very strongly. So I appreciate all the work.
Ms. Lima.
Thank you. thanks to everyone that's been involved in this. I think this, it's changed how we're doing things here, and it's changed what it feels like to do it. So I think this work has been very difficult, and I think as it's been mentioned, we're moving at our own pace, and then the world around us is moving at a different pace sometimes. I think the last few months have been particularly hard in feeling like even with all of this work, there's so much going on. Our students, our parents, our community are feeling it. But I think it reminds us how much harder we need to try and not give up on this. So to me, this is something that's very important. I'm absolutely supportive of this work. And hope to see it continue because I think it's made a difference and we need it now. You know, I think more than ever in some ways. We've always needed it, but right now it's just like, woof, it's tough. So thank you. Thanks to everyone that's been involved in this and participated at some extent. I love them.
Second to all of you, what you've said. And I think what's unique, having attended the IE experience, is that it starts on such a personal level as opposed to someone telling you. So I think that, in my mind, is what has been a game changer in all of this, and so significant. And very nice to hear the mass that is created at a high school, and then seeing that turnaround aspect, because obviously that is what the goal was to begin with, you know, to create the understanding in a way that would have a profound impact. I do think it's expensive, but I think to see the effect it's had has been money well spent. But hopefully we can continue the significant work. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I'm not going to say anything because you all said what I would say. So we'll leave it at that.
Good night.
Yeah. Well, we actually have one item to come back to, which is the actual item 6 on the consent agenda. So we can move to that item and not quite say yet good night.
I pulled that not for the reason that I have anything to say about the actual MOU, but because of the extent of the program going over so many years and so much money, I thought it'd be nice to have a discussion of it at the meeting. I don't think we should do it at 10 minutes to 10. So I'm very happy to make the motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between Just Communities and Santa Barbara Unified School District, with the proviso that it comes back at a future meeting so we can discuss it just in general terms of what the goals are, what the evaluation is, and what else might have to be done. But I'm very happy with, I mean, you just saw the work there, and this is the vehicle that allows that work to be done, and I don't think any of us want to stop that vehicle from going. So I'll make that motion.
Second?
Motion and second. Before we vote on it, I would like to say that, you know, I also wanted to see it pulled. And it's not for the work not having, obviously, an impact on all of what we do, but it's simply because of the size of the contract. And I think that as a practice that we move forward in the future as a district, that when we look at contracts like this, we do not do what I consider sort of a backward approach to it, which is present outcomes after the fact, after we vote on something. We need to present outcomes before we vote on something. So when we do reviews of programs at this level, at this size, we need to do a review of outcomes before we vote. It's practice, and it doesn't mean that, you know, outcomes wouldn't be positive, but they could be negative. We could see things. And I think in that regard, the board does have a responsibility to look at every program we are funding. And in particular, if we have questions, if we have concerns based on the outcomes, that we have the opportunity to chime in and perhaps ask questions that may influence a direction before contracts put up for board consideration. So I think in the future, we definitely need to do that. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. I think with that, we are almost done. Coming events, board, any other coming events items? If not, future agenda items, I know we had one earlier on today, but any others? No? If not, we can adjourn. Our next meeting is Tuesday, August 9th, 2016. There will be no other meeting in July. Thank you all.
Thank you.